let's go playoff racing. $100,000 has reached its penultimate battle on an all-new road course challenge, where tonight for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to the round of 8 finale in this, the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. Happy that you're with us, as always, here on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. We're alongside myself, Evan Pasoko. I'm joined by Tim Terry, Randy Cheneth upstairs, our director, Hugo Louise, along with Justin Prince as well with us. And Tim, we come off of a thrilling finish 2 weeks ago at Indianapolis. Corey Vincent stealing a win to the checkered flag, the second non-playoff driver in a row so far to take a win away, which means that coming into this evening, everybody's still up for grabs.
Absolutely. Nobody locked into that season finale at Homestead as of yet, but after this evening at the Roval, we're going to have 4 drivers vying for that championship prize in the final round of this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. So we'll see how this Roval plays out. The new configuration is here on iRacing, and we're getting ready to see these drivers battle it out for 65 laps.
After tonight, our 8 championship hopefuls will be whittled down to 4, and we will know the drivers who will fight for that $40,000 main prize in a couple of weeks' time from Homestead, Miami. Here is the situation coming into this evening. Keegan Leahy way out in front, 39 above the cut line, is in a very good position, but again, still not technically a mathematical walk. Behind him, you'll see Zach Novak above the cut line. The 29 machine as well in line here, so a very good position, 28 I should say rather, of Garrett Lowe. He's in. And Blake Reynolds is the bubble driver, 2,058 points, has him 13 ahead of a lot of big names, Randy. Ryan Luza on the outside looking in. Michael Conti, who we'll talk a little bit more about in just a moment, but I'm sure a lot tonight. Jimmy Willis as well, looking for a trip to victory lane. And maybe most notably, Bobby Zilinski. He was on track for a very good finish at Indianapolis 2 weeks ago. Ran out of fuel and ended up in the high 30s in the standings. He finds himself needing a victory this evening.
And he's looking pretty good coming in qualifying. Right now in the warm-up and practice, he's 8/10 quicker than anybody. So that 18 of Bobby Zilinski, we saw him dominate out at Sonoma. He looks keen on dominating the second road course on the schedule. And looking at these points with the qualifying, it's going to be interesting. 2 of those people currently in the top 4, Zach Novak and Blake Reynolds. Of our playoff drivers, they're the 2 worst qualifiers coming into this, and a couple of those drivers on the bottom 4 are some of the best qualifiers coming into this. Bobby Zilinski and Michael Conti, 6th and 8th in the points coming into Charlotte. They will start on the front row, so they look keen on getting anything they can to get themselves bumped up into that finale race at Homestead.
And there is still some big picture as we take a look at the next standing sheet, Tim. Not only are these 8 drivers fighting for the championship, but everybody else is fighting just to stay in this series for next year. The top 20 in points get to stay here. Bottom 20, so 21st on back, would have to get in through the Pro Series. Well, we take a look at the rest of the standings. Nick Ottinger and Casey Kerwin, well, they did not get playoff spots. They have locked themselves in, and they will compete in this series in 2020. Everybody else, 11th through 31st, fighting to be top 20. Right now, Ryan Lowe, last driver in. Dylan Duval, the first driver out at -1. Eric J. Smith, 32nd, the highest driver in points to have been mathematically eliminated already.
And we saw Dylan Duval at Indianapolis get a top 10 run, and he was vying for a win near the end of that race. And I got to talk to him a little bit after that race, and I asked him, would you have done anything different? He said, no, because I'm racing for points. I need to get into this top 20 so I don't have to go down to the Pro Series or what would be a relegation round, per se, for some of those that are into sports. When you look at that other side, though, you got Malik Ray, who's really poured the pressure on these last couple of weeks. You got Jake Nichols, who was vying for a playoff spot early in the season. He's 13th in points. Brad Davies, who's a mainstay in this series on the left side of your screen. And then on the right side of your screen, you're seeing some names that really have to pull their socks up. Guys like Ray Alfala and Chris Overland, the Wood Brothers team, on the outside looking in right now. Ashton Crowder has had a decent season, but he needs a few more points to get there as well. So there's some really big names. Brian Schoenberg comes to mind on that other side of the screen that really need to have two solid nights, not only here at the Roval, but also at Homestead, to try to lock themselves in to this series once again in 2020.
And to keep the theme with the road courses and to turn the conversation back to our playoff drivers, as we're just a few minutes away from hitting the grid and going racing tonight at the Roval for 65 laps. You mentioned those drivers at the bottom four, Andy, doing very good tonight, notably Bobby Zilinski, of course, wouldn't have been in this position if he had an extra lap of fuel 2 weeks ago, but instead he basically needs to win it at the bottom. He has won the last three road courses in this series, the last three Sonoma races, of course, earlier this season, but as well dating back to 2017. That's also the last time we saw a new track come to the service, is when Sonoma replaced Watkins Glen for the 2017 campaign. So he's somebody that needs to pick up, but also, before Sonoma was our token road course, it was Watkins Glen, and in the first iteration of Watkins Glen to beat on the schedule, Michael Conti found victory lane in 2014. He's also below the cut line. Those two drivers are the top two on the board in practice right now. They were also the top two in qualifying, and we'll let you know which order they did qualify in just a moment. But that puts an immense amount of pressure on those bubble drivers, the Lowe's and the Reynolds, even a Novak. Any sort of issue here, once this race gets green, we don't have sector yellows, the car spins out, you're not getting a full course caution. So you make a mistake, your night could be done. There is so much on the line tonight. Two viable picks below those top four who have a very, very good shot of winning. And of course, any of these playoff drivers have shown us all year not to underestimate them.
They definitely have. And you talked about those two names currently outside the top four, Bobby Zilinski and Michael Conti. Bobby Zilinski, very successful road course driver, all the accolades in this championship you just talked about. He's also in that Porsche Esports Super Cup driving for VRS Coanda SimSport, so it should be no surprise that Bobby Zilinski does very, very well on these road courses every time the championships come to them. But Michael Conti as well, one of the most successful road course drivers in this championship. He also was very close to a win at Watkins Glen in 2016 after a very controversial finish with PJ Sturgios. They had contact coming off the final corner. Michael only about an eighth of a mile or so away from victory in that contest, but both of those drivers are going to be exceedingly quick. Michael, I think, could definitely, if he really put the effort in, be a world championship road course contender as well if he decided to, and it's not a surprise to see them out at the head of the field by the margin that they have over everybody, and this is going to be a fun battle to watch for 65 laps.
It's been fun just watching these drivers warm up. Of course, you've already seen some shots of it on the back straightaway. That is the new chicane that you'll see in use this upcoming weekend when Monster Energy Cup Series Racing goes at it from the Charlotte Roval. That got added to the iRacing service. iRacing and Charlotte Motor Speedway worked together to get that scanned into the service. So you're actually really seeing some of the first ever laps with Cup cars on the Roval. Something tells me a couple of drivers will be taken to it this week. It might get some seat time in the sim before then to get themselves acclimated. The practice session, though, has drawn to a close, so let's go trackside and take a look at your Race Spot TV starting grid for round number 17. Pole position in this one belongs to none other than Bobby Zilinski as he looks for a fourth straight road course win. He's on pole position for this one and will be joined there by the 8 car of Michael Conti, who qualifies in second position. Casey Kerwin will roll from third on the grid with Keegan Leahy behind him in the number 4 position. And then you'll find the 99 Logan Clampett rounding out your top 5.
Might want to count this guy as a dark horse. Nick Ottinger in the 47 likes these road courses. He'll start 6th. Jimmy Mullis will start in position number 7 with Ryan Luza in position number 8, looking to get himself into that final round of the playoffs after the Roval tonight. Matt Busa and Garrett Lowe complete your top 10.
Brad Davies is going to roll off 11th with Blake Reynolds so close to getting a win at Indianapolis. He'll start on the outside of row 6. Ashton Crowder in 13th, Corey Vincent 14th, and Christian Challoner will round out your top 15.
Continuing on through, Phil Diaz will roll from 16th as the field takes off, and Jarl T in 17th. Zach Novak starts halfway there in 18th position. Dylan Duvall will roll from 19th, and Chris Shearbird rounds out your top 20.
The 21 will start 21st. It's Ray Alfala. Ben Nelson starts in 22nd. 23rd is Jake Nichols. Chris Overland 24th. And Casey Tucker rolls off 25th.
Michael Gariglio will make up the 26th spot with Adam Benefiel in 27th. Taylor Hurst 28th. Eric J. Smith in 29th. And Malik Ray will round out your top 30.
And then to put a bow tie on the field, Cody Bias will start 31st with Brian Schoenberg, Michael Guest, Nicholas Shelton, and Nathan Lyon through 35th. Ryan Lowe starts P36 tonight with Timmy Hill 37th and Brandon Cattell in 38th. That's a look top to bottom, a Race Spot TV starting grid. Let's talk specifics about this Roval. Of course, 2.28 miles around and 17 quarters. You are utilizing all 4 of the quarters on the typical 1.5 mile oval. But again, no yellows once this race gets underway. It is going to be a very exciting one. We saw how it debuted for the Cup Series 1 year ago. For the first time ever, Randy getting set to go Roval racing here in the PEAK Series.
I'm super excited. I love these road courses. I love these cars on road courses. They always put on such a good show. They're so unique to anything else you're going to see take on a road course anywhere in the world. Take so much skill, have so much power, and of course, we're going to have the 800 horsepower trim underneath these bad boys here tonight. So you're going to be probably pushing about 160, 170 into the back straight and front straight chicanes. Going to be some great passing opportunities getting wound up for everybody, and hopefully we don't stack them up early as we get ready to go green.
That old chicane was very high speed, a quick left-right zigzag. The expanded chicane should allow for some more passing opportunities down at this end of the racetrack. The entry to the chicane is turn 11. The exit is turn 12. We'll do our best to keep you posted on what around the racetrack is exactly where. But also, Tim, talk about how big road courses have been. First time ever, 2 of them have been on the calendar at the same time. So not only is this big for where it is in the season, but playing a big part of the championship.
And 2 of the best shoes when it comes to road courses in this series are going to start on the front row, but don't discount Keegan Leahy in position number 4 either. This one is going to be a fantastic night of racing. Can't wait to see it with these heavy stock cars around this racetrack. And Evan, you hit the nail on the head when the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series came here for the first time last year. It was wild. I expect nothing less from this series here tonight.
Pace car going to dive down and in. As always, we're so happy that you're with us on Race Spot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. The field is in the hands of Bobby Zilinski as we say, let's go playoff racing from the Roval. Green flag in the air, and they're going to have to go through that chicane for the first time. The 18 car checks out to turn 1.
And everyone's cleared through turn 1 for the first time. Bobby Zilinski, better part of 10 car lengths already as they head through the infield. Michael Connie has a breakaway from Casey Kerwin as well. It's going to be Keegan Leahy trying to keep pace with that 14, but everyone's single filing out as they head through turns 3 and 4.
And you can see the track limits really don't matter. They're way over on the left-hand side of that blue line, right up against the grass. They're going to use them for the inch they can. Up the hill now, it's a blind corner through the middle portion of the racetrack. A left-hander in turn 6, 7, and now 8 as they get back up and onto the banking. And we'll see these cars get up to speed. But it is Zilinski handily over Conti, Kerwin, Leahy, and Clampett. No changes, the top 5 as they hit the chicane for the first time.
They'll get down to this braking zone into the chicane, and we'll see who can make up some time here. Look at Nick Ottinger get right up tight to Logan Clampett through the chicane and trying to set something up here. We'll see what he can do through NASCAR 3 and 4. Nothing doing out of the chicane, but Ottinger trying to make something happen here and put himself up into the top 5 here as we complete lap number 1.
Zilinski really attacking those turtle curves as well as he does complete lap number 1. That's something to keep an eye out for in the chicane. You don't want to be too aggressive on the first right-hander. You could hike that car up on 2 wheels, and obviously that's not going to help you getting through as fast as you can. But very impressed at how well this field navigated that opening lap. No major issues. Top 10 or top 5. Only change for position saw Garrett Lowe go 10th to 9th as he was able to make a pass on Matt Busa. As all of these drivers try to get themselves themselves into a rhythm as the sun starts to go down as well. Late afternoon race today for the Roval. Zilinski putting it to him. And I know you mentioned that his practice time, his best practice time, was over 8/10 better than the next fastest driver. That hasn't changed, at least early in the race trim. Zilinski's advantage already more than 1.7 seconds.
Yeah, so he's just checking out. That's incredible pace for the first lap and a half of this contest. And Michael Conti, he has a similar gap over P3 of Casey Kerwin, but third and fourth still very tightly contested. You see them running over the painted lines down there on the inside and in towards the NASCAR 3 and 4. You always hear us whenever we go and talk about the Rolex for IMSA at the start of the year. We'll reference NASCAR 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 at the Daytona International Speedway. It's the first time for me on the Roval broadcasting and referring to the tracks here, the corners here at Charlotte by that same moniker. But Kerwin's starting to open up over that 62 Leahy, who's probably just looking to have a nice quiet race and bring that car home solidly with a ticket to Homestead.
That's the objective, is to just keep this thing in one piece. And Michael Conti in the number 2 position right now continues to run at a pretty good pace, pulling away from Kerwin as noted, but not really able to keep up with Zilinski. Also back in the pack, the number 21 division, Roval, is in the thick of things. He and the 15 car are going to race in the intersection and squeezing that time the Jim Beaver Esports entry of Guerrilla out a little bit. Alfala on a charge, a battle that is halfway through the pack. You've also got the 74 mixed in here as well. A couple of cars doing the battle. Some of them already showing some scrapes and beats and bangs from the early going.
And not only is this a battle on the racetrack, though, Evan, it's also a battle in the point standings. These are two drivers that are outside the top 20 when it comes to the championship standings. As you look on board and see that Jim Beaver Esports 15 of Guerrilla trying to set up that 21 of Ray Alfala. He's a little more aggressive in the braking zone. Is Ray Alfala going in? He's going to gain some time coming out, and the driver in front of him, Dylan Duval in the 42, same situation that he's in. He's outside the top 20 looking in. Right now, this is a battle for, well, outside of top 20 position, 21, 22, and 23, ironically, as they work around here to complete lap number 3.
It's pretty much where that battle is in the championship standings, as you mentioned. And no surprise, the mid pack is where you're going to see guys who have already gotten beaten, banged up a little bit. I see Timmy Hill and Brian Schoenberg going to do battle down into turn 1. Flipside Tactics Toyota down low for Hill, not able to make the move. And the Williams Esports entry of Schoenberg holds him off for the time being. So a handful of drivers here as well, trying to weather the storm early, but not totally incident-free. Issues with low from the get-go in this one. The number 7 car had a problem down in turn 1 on lap number 30. He got sideways coming off of the corner, made contact with the outside wall and Cattell. So it looks like Lowe's night may be done already, and that damage is going to ride with Brandon Cattell for the entirety of the rest of this race, which still sees 61 to go on the board.
Yeah, and for anyone following the championship, that's going to be Ryan Lowe, not Garrett Lowe. So don't freak out too much, as Garrett Lowe is still very much a part of this inside of the top 10. Actually moved up a couple spots since the start of the race. So Garrett Lowe looking very strong up in P8 at the moment.
And I know it's very early on for the 18 machine, Tim, and you know, I talked about the curse of the jinx or whatever you want to say. We mentioned at the start of this round when we were analyzing what races were going to be in this round of 8. We started in Darlington. It was a non-playoff driver at Ashton Crowder winning. And as we mentioned 2 weeks ago at Indianapolis, Corey Vincent, another non-playoff driver, taking a win. But we said about Zilinski, he's probably a pretty good bet for the Roval. If you're a bet man, I don't care what the margin is, you know, put it on the 18 machine because it's a very safe bet to make. But you don't want to have to be in a must-win situation. Arguably, both he and Conti are in that. Now, I think the 8 car could make it happen, but the cars in front of him would need to have some major issues. Conti comes into this race 17 points behind Reynolds, who on the racetrack right now is currently occupying 11. So Blake's doing his job in the number 30 machine, but I wonder when it comes down to strategy, if you're Conti, do you swing for the fence right away and go in that win or go home mode, or do you try to points it out with a P2 for Zilinski? Is leading by now almost already 3 seconds going to get into your head? I mean, it's pretty clear indication we go racing at a road course who's going to have the fast cars. We can figure that out in the opening 5 laps. Strategy historically in this series has been one of the most determining factors, though, in how these things actually come to a conclusion.
And I'm sure Brandon Hastings and everybody on the box for the 8 of Michael Conti is they've got to be ready to call an audible if they have to, Evan, and I think that's what they are thinking going in to this event. And same deal with a lot of these drivers running around that mid-pack. You see Luza and Blake Reynolds on your screen there as well. A few of those drivers that are battling for a playoff position in this final race in round number 1. But I think you have to be ready to call an audible. It doesn't matter if you are Michael Conti or if you're these guys battling just inside the top 10. If you can advance your position, you're going to do so. Now, I know our strategist Justin Prince has said these guys can go halfway on fuel, but do you stress it on tires? How do you play this thing out? It's all going to come down to those strategists that are on top of the box, and we'll see who throws the Hail Mary and see who tries to, maybe out-strategize that 18 of Bobby Zilinski.
You see Reynolds follow Luza that time through the chicane. They going to cut that quarter exit short before they get up and onto the bank. And if you're not that familiar again with our playoff drivers, no worries. You can look for that PEAK blue color on the splitters, the windshield banners, and the spoilers. That's an indication of the 8 drivers still in the playoffs. Again, after tonight, that number will go down to just 4. But this exchange that we've been following for 10th and 11th, one of the better battles on the racetrack. Small mistake by Luza would allow Reynolds to get right on top of him here. So there's a couple of these fights, even the group behind them, Davies, Vincent, Crowder, all on top of each other, whereas your top 10 have a little bit more space than everybody else.
Yeah, and I think that's not a surprise, especially with, those in the top 10, these early goings of the run. First time we're seeing these cars in hot competition around this, and of course we've only recently gotten this layout of the track with the updated chicane. These guys probably only getting a handful of days to really test, and who knows if there's been actually a proper running with any of these drivers to really get out and see what their competition has. But as far as these drivers in the top 10, driver that really impressed me coming into this one was the 53 of Ryan Luza. We talked about it all season, that Luza was always a force to be reckoned with on the ovals and almost always a contender to win. We saw at Sonoma though, 53 car, no other way to say it, compared to how we're seeing that car compete on the ovals. He looked terrible at Sonoma for that first road course round. Got into a big incident, didn't qualify well. I think he finished something like 37th or 38th in that race after a big incident just before the carousel. Tonight, though, he really impressed me. He qualified that car in the top 10, and he currently runs in 10th, trying to hold off one of his championship rivals, the Blake Reynolds. So the 53 of Ryan Luza putting in a ton of work, I assume, coming into this Roval race, and it's paying off in dividends for him here early.
It is. This is exactly the showing that he wants at the Roval. The problem there, Tim, is, as Randy mentioned, the car behind him is Blake Reynolds. In the points, it is Reynolds who comes into tonight at a 4th position, Luza in 5th, some 13 points behind him. Well, you're going to have to outrun that 30 car by at least about 13 spots at a racetrack. He's not doing it right now, and in fact, Reynolds is on the charge, peeking to the inside that time, and up and onto the banking. Luza goes too wide. Here comes the 30 to the inside. The 88 of Brad Davies will follow through as well, and Luza now drops 2 positions, one of which to a championship contender.
And you mentioned the 30 of Blake Reynolds. Garrett Lowe has the same amount of points coming in as Blake Reynolds does, but Garrett Lowe is also running 2 more spots ahead of where they were. So now Ryan Luza running behind both of those drivers right now, and now he's being eaten up on the racetrack by the Renegades 27 of Corey Vincent. Vincent coming into the final chicane before the start-finish line, and he's once again going to be right on the back bumper of the 53. Little bobble there from Luza. 27 takes a little look to the inside, down into corner number 1 to try to dispatch his 53. One more spot, and they're lining up in behind the 53. If Luza gets tight in there through 2, and oh boy, they're still trying to get around that 53. He's losing a ton of spots here.
And the 77's going to get the job done. The steady MD Toyota, but he overcooked it a little bit. Ashton Crowder, so the 53 back to the inside into turn number 5. This is a whole gaggle of cars trying to team up on Ryan Luza. The 77 now. He'll have the inside in turn 7. He's got it. Here comes Christian Challoner. He'll try to take the spot away again. And Luza very aggressive right up to the outside on the side-by-side there in what is the turns 1 and 2 of the oval, doing his very, very best, Randy, to stay in this fight. But these cars are going to be unrelenting, and I was wondering how much room they'd give him being a playoff driver, but it seems they're unafraid. Challoner gets the spot, and now next up on deck would be Phil Diaz, followed by Tien and Zach Novak, somebody else who's got a lot on the line tonight, coming in as the second driver of your top 4.
Yeah, unfortunately for Luza, he cycled into a really what I would call a gaggle of really strong road course racers. You have Christian Challoner that just got around him, one of the few drivers we have racing from Europe in this championship. And Challoner does a lot of streaming on Twitch of iRacing, and he does both road course and oval racing at a high level. Next behind him, he has Phil Diaz. Phil, immense history of road course racing for better part of a decade in sim racing. Driver behind Diaz is Jarl Tien, who we know is very strong on the road courses as well, being, I believe, a Finnish driver if memory serves me right. So these guys that are all packed in behind and just gotten ahead of Luza, they're not going to cut him any slack if they smell blood in the water and can pick up some spots.
And the big thing to keep in mind as well is right now we're talking about a battle for what would be fourth in the points. That becomes a battle for fifth, Tim, if the running order stays the same. And Bobby Zilinski could be able to go on to get the checkered flag this evening. He would jump for that automatic bid and go from 8th to 1st. So Leahy in the lead. He dropped down to 2nd. Novak would become 3rd. And all of a sudden, if you're the 28 machine low, you're now the driver on the cut line. Both Reynolds and Luza, it doesn't matter if you're funny with each other, you're now both below. So, that's a tied point situation between Garrett Lowe in 8th position and as well the number 30 machine of Blake Reynolds in 10th. If Zilinski were to win this race, the final transfer spot could come down between those two and who finishes higher, and Lowe right now running in P8 is only 2 spots ahead of Blake Reynolds. That could be a thrilling fight to the end also.
And oh, by the way, Zach Novak right now not having the best of nights. He's running back in position number 18 right now. He's still doing enough right now. If the race were to end now, he's still doing enough to be a part of that battle. But Zach Novak can't rest on his laurels right now. If something was to happen to this Roush Fenway Racing number 6 car, he'd fall back and potentially not be in the final 4 into Homestead. But right now, running his own race right now in position number 18, has a little ways back to the next driver in line, which would be Ben Nelson, and a little ways to get up here to catch the next battle on the racetrack, which is currently side by side between Phil Diaz and Jarl Tien. Tien going to pick up that position. But you said it right. If that number 18 of Bobby Zilinski does win, it does change that picture a little bit. It magnifies that tied battle going in between Garrett Lowe and Blake Reynolds. But with the way Zach Novak is running right now, you might need to kind of put a star beside Zach Novak's name, because as we said coming in, nobody is locked into that final 4. No lead is safe right now, maybe except for that Bobby Zilinski lead right now, which is 4.7 seconds.
He continues to grow it over top of Michael Conti. Conti holding steady at about 2.5 seconds in his own right above Casey Kerwin, who is still in 3rd, so you haven't missed anything there. But a good battle may be due up, because Keegan Leahy in 4th has been closing on that number 14 machine. Not that far behind, you have a battle between Logan Clampett, Nick Ottinger, so that's another duo going at it. So 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th last time by, both separated by less than a second. So both of the cars behind in those duos have been closing in the last couple of laps, and maybe set the challenge here in just a little bit.
We're starting to get into the phase of the run that tires are starting to be a real struggle for these guys. Most of everyone out on the track at the moment has dropped off 2 seconds from the fastest laps they ran in the first 2 or 3 laps when the tires were nice and relatively at high grip levels compared to what they have now. Now they're battling heat in the tires, and of course one of the unique things about running on a Roval, of course anyone on the iRacing service who's done the Daytona 24 hours that we do at the start of the year really kicks off the special events. When you're on these big Roval tracks, it's really difficult on the right side tires. Those tires on the outside of the race car, they tend to heat up in NASCAR 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and that's would have been a struggle for these teams all week long, getting them set up and getting them working correctly. Now that we're out here in competition on a day that's a little on the warm side, but overall not too bad, 91 degrees is the track temperature as they currently roll. You're going to be seeing these guys probably see the cars really wiggling around on the brakes, and seeing a lot of people struggling loose as well, even getting to the throttle as that right front and that right rear starts to struggle with the extra heat. That said, NASCAR 1 and 2 currently mostly behind shadows. That's going to be relatively nice for them on the temps, but still something to think about, and maybe if the drop-off continues, could see the 2-stopper come into play.
We'll see if drivers as well want to make that audible call based on where they're running on the racetrack. Probably came in more so set on going for the one stopper. That's one that, by the math, makes the most sense. But, if Zilinski really starts to continue to stretch it out, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, in a position where they need a win. Conti, I still think, is a tough call because he's on the bubble of being able to points it, while at the same time, a win would obviously guarantee it. I'm not sure if the gamble would really come from there either. Just an update on some of the drivers in this race. We already mentioned that Ryan Lowe had an issue and his night was done. Nicholas Shelton and Brian Schoenberg have also gone behind the wall. Brandon Cattell was damaged in that earlier incident with Lowe. His car down on the pit lane, but the other 34 drivers still on track, and in fact all still on the lead lap for the moment, with lap times ranging in the mid 1 minute 16s. Furthest car on track behind your race leaders, 34th place runner Cody Bias. He's got about 30 seconds till he needs to worry about getting lapped. So not a major concern here like what it would be if we were playoff racing at some of the shorter tracks, but it is something to keep in mind when your race leaders are trying to navigate some of the trickier portions of the racetrack.
This is the closest battle within the top 10 right now, Evan. It's Garrett Lowe and Matt Busa going at it, and Busa's been pouring a little bit of pressure on these last couple laps to the 28 car, but hasn't been able to really make that move as of yet. This is probably the biggest gap that they've had in the last couple laps. The 5 of Busa trying to get position number 8 away and not too far in behind. Blake Reynolds kind of has to do a little bit of defense as well. Brad Davies within striking distance of that number 30 for what would be 10th and 11th place respectively. The only other driver that I've really seen falling back here a little bit has been Ryan Luza. Luza in the 53 has fallen back to 15th. Jarl Tien's not too far behind, and neither is Phil Diaz in the 75.
More contact. Ralph Falla got hit on the exit of the chicane. The 74 car, Taylor Hurst, was trying to get around him in a fight for 24th position, tagged him and looped him around. So a rough start. Going to get even worse for the driver of the number 21 Ford. Of course, the 4-time eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series champion, unable to defend that title this season, not qualifying into the playoffs. It has been a rough go for who was the number 1 pick in the draft earlier this year by Wood Brothers Racing. So we know he had a little bit of damage when we checked in with him even earlier on in this race. If you see some more scrapes on that 21 Ford, that would be the reason why. Fighting still for third, the 62 car Leahy, getting closer and closer to Casey Kerwin. And the one thing that changes with this chicane, Randy, is you got to back it up obviously a lot more. You're going much further in as they push that inside wall, off into the inside to give it a real chicane, whereas the old chicane, which it wasn't in this series, but you saw it last year with the Cup cars, it was more so of a straight shot. You couldn't really make a pass, so momentum to carry up into turns 3 and 4 of the oval was huge. Casey Kerwin had Leahy on his bumper that time, but he pulled away a lot better on exit. Seems it's struggling for cars, challenging to keep speed through that area.
Yeah, it really is. It's more of a stop-start complex, what you get at some of the chicanes. Like, we'll think internationally here. It reminds me a lot more of Turn 1 at Monza, whereas the chicane we had previously was really a little bit more like the bus stop at Daytona or even Watkins Glen, where it was a lot quicker through there. That said, it was a much more of a straight-line shot circulating through that bit of the racetrack as we watched side by side this fight between the 62 and the 14, and Keegan trying to do everything he can to keep tabs of the 14 car. But you are right, just the way that the chicane on the back straightaway has changed really makes things difficult on drivers. You want to be able to get through there quickly, and if anything, even be able to hawk those turtle curves nicely. But if you can't get the traction and the power down on exit, you're talking about probably a half-mile sprint till you get through 3 and 4 and down onto the brakes again into the front straightaway chicane. If you don't have the traction coming off the corner, it doesn't really matter how quickly you get through there.
And yeah, and replay there with, I guess, that onboard with Leahy really showed you just how hard these guys are going at it as they both drove right up against the fence there and about 50 feet before they actually came back up and onto the racing line sideways through turn 1 as Keegan Leahy's hanging it out. We've seen drivers like Luza go so wide in that part of the racetrack that the car gets unsettled. They've gotten into the fence. We've seen some sparks gone a-flying so far, but that 62 car got way out of shape, and now these two battles that we've been keeping an eye on, the fight for third, the fight for fifth, they've kind of become one battle because Logan Clampett now actually closer to the back of Leahy that time on the inside section than Leahy was to Kerwin. So instead of watching these two sets of two, let's call it a 4-way fight for third on back.
Yeah, Clampett's brought a friend with him in Nick Ottinger in the 47 car, running in position number 6, right in behind that steady MD number 99, and been keeping a half eye on that battle as well for 8th and 9th place. Garrett Lowe is he's got company again in Matt Busa in that number 5 car, and Garrett Lowe seems to be a little bit better, a little more aggressive into the braking zones at 5 of Matt Busa when they get to the high-speed areas of the racetrack like NASCAR 1 and 2, and we'll see it here, I'm sure, during 3 and 4, that the 5 car seems to pick up a lot more speed, get a little sniff of that draft, get up there, but the 28, really aggressive, Evan, when it comes into those braking zones, and it seems to be working for this Renegades number 28 in this battle for 8th.
It does, and he's a driver who made some noise early, picked up a spot for Busa right off for the get-go, and hasn't looked back since then, so he's up 2. In fact, funny enough, up 2 positions is the highest gain of any driver in the top 16 in the standings. So it seems like qualified was a very good indication of what these cars were going to have on a race trim. But Randy, that's not surprising. When you're on an oval, you tape it up, you go out there, put down a hot lap. Totally different when we're talking about 3 seconds of fall off, working in the draft and all of that. When on the road course, there are so many different opportunities to make mistakes and to gain time that qualifying is probably a very good indication of how this race is going to go. No changes, 1st through 7th position on the racetrack. So again, Lowe, highest driver in the running order, that's done something, going 10th to P8. Everybody else running exactly where they started. And granted, we are watching that 4-car fight. That could change shortly, but at least now everybody up front running where they started.
Yeah, and like you said, that's not much of a surprise here in the early goings. No one really struggling with the race cars at all. Everyone really got out there and started circulating well. The only driver that started in the top 10 that's really fallen off was actually Ryan Luza, who we talked about qualified well. He's fallen down to 17th. Blake Reynolds started outside of the top 10, and he basically has taken Luza's spot up 2 spots into P10. But we haven't seen a close fight really inside of the top 5. We haven't seen people sending it down into the chicane. People have showed really good patience. I think there's been gaps where if someone really wanted to, they could have, really sent it down the inside, locked up the brakes, probably had to battle with a bit of wheel hopping in one of these chicanes and try to go side by side and pick up a spot. But I've not seen any of that for a series that doesn't regularly go to road courses. Only, previously only once a season and twice for the first time this year. The entire field, I think, has shown great patience with one another and really letting this race play out rather than just setting it up the inside at what they deem the first opportunity and potentially causing an incident.
A ton of fun trying to get these powerful stock cars to make it work around this road course that has very little elevation change unless you count the banking on the oval as part of it. You do have to be very diligent on when you're getting on and off of the throttle. Should also note, back to the strategy conversation, Nick Ottinger came down pit road that last time. He was running in the number 6 position, and he came in at lap number 18. So therefore, that could be a driver deciding to go for the 2-stopper. We figure if you're going to split halfway, 32-33 is the cross flags, you probably come down to the pit lane then. But Nick Ottinger indicated that he wants to go for the 2-stop strategy. The 62 car also making that dive down to pit road. So other drivers in this picture are coming down, and we'll see if that influences the top cars.
We'll see if that forces the hand of the top 2 of Bobby Zilinski and Michael Conti. But right now, up in front and still doing some really, really quick laps. Zilinski up by 6 seconds over Michael Conti, then about another 5 seconds or so back to Casey Kerwin in position number 3. One of the most entertaining battles on the racetrack the last couple laps has been the 53 of Ryan Luza and the 6 of Zach Novak. I know Randy mentioned that Ryan Luza fell from 8th all the way back to what is now position number 16 after some drivers came on to pit road. But Zach Novak has been pressuring Ryan Luza the last couple laps. A little bit less pressure right now. Zach Novak had a little bit of a bobble the last lap by, but the 53 of Ryan Luza, Zach Novak, that's a battle for 16th on the racetrack. But Evan, it's a battle for the last running playoff driver currently in this field. And with Zach Novak running up in a top 4 position, but running back in position number 17 right now, and Ben Nelson right in behind him, you have to believe that he's probably crunching the numbers as the 8 car comes onto pit road.
So with the 8 machine of Michael Conti coming down to pit road, Bobby Zilinski now the only one left out and in front of the field. And it was kind of alluded to a little bit earlier that, yes, speed is a huge indication. Don't get me wrong. Bobby Zilinski, Michael Conti well out in front. But in those past trips to Watkins Glen, the last couple of years at Sonoma, we have seen split strategies. Drivers go for 2 stops versus 1 stops. And sometimes those varying strategies line up perfectly at the end of the race. And it is an exciting one. But if you're Bobby Zilinski, you have the biggest call to make. This is going to come down to everybody on that radio, everybody on that team having to be a part of this decision, Randy. You have the best race car. Now you need to make sure that you do not throw that away by being caught off on the strategy. Do you come down now that everybody else is going for 2, or do you stick to your guns maybe, go for the 1-stopper?
You might stay out another lap, but I think if you're Bobby Zilinski, if you're planning on doing the 2-stopper, you need to hit pit road right now. He's going to come off a NASCAR 4, and that's exactly what he's doing. So Bobby Zilinski in. He had a big gap, so he's going to have slightly newer tires. He should still have the race lead. You might see someone else who's picked up big gains. What's the 14er Kerwin going to do? He's going to come down pit road. So at the moment, it doesn't seem like we have anybody gambling on the 1-stopper. This is definitely 2-stop territory. Something to keep in mind at Sonoma earlier this year, that was a 55-lap race. Everyone did 2 stops there. This race 10 laps longer, the lap time a little bit shorter, but I think with the extra laps, you're still going to be pushing the tires a little bit harder, especially with some of the starts and stops you get around this place. Going to be really tough on the tires. Seems like there's really no split strategy whatsoever. A couple of drivers have stayed out a couple laps. But I'd be shocked if we get anyone that goes tries to stretch it to lap 33 with the entire field making this 2-stop call.
A little bit later than 1/3 distance, but Zilinski does decide to come down to the pit lane, and I think that's a smart decision for him. You're faster than the other cars around you. If you stay on the same strategy as them, you should be in a pretty good position. This does open the window, as we saw all these other top 5, top 10 cars coming down to the pit lane, for maybe somebody in the middle of the pack, Tim, to then try to stretch it up, go for the 1-stopper, and therefore the 1-stop becomes the strategy play, whereas 2 seems to be the call that everybody has agreed to go with.
Absolutely, but for the most part, it looks like a lot of these guys are going that 2-stop strategy. We might see on that second round of stops, maybe somebody try to undercut by a lap or 2 and try to gain a little bit of an advantage, but right now you got to try to find some way to beat Bobby Zilinski, because Zilinski in that 18 car has that target on his back. Michael Conti has been strong at these road courses as well. Got to try to find some way to beat them if they don't beat themselves when they come down onto pit road. But it looks like Zilinski has been smooth on pit roads, been smooth on the racetrack, and so far through 22 laps, looking pretty good in that number 18 car.
This portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by PEAK Antifreeze, the official antifreeze of the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. Pit cycle has rounded through, and Michael Conti did stand to gain by short pitting to the 18 machine. We talked about the seconds of fall off, and that 1-lap difference close to Michael Conti and by about 2.5 seconds. So he is now only 4 seconds off, but still P2. And I don't think that Zilinski is sweating all that much with the 8-car challenge. And again, we also think with the live points, Zilinski would still be a lock. Michael Conti would be out by single digits. So he's doing his job, barring a win. He would need some of those other drivers to drop down the running order further if second position is as high as this 8-car is going to get tonight.
It's going to be interesting to see Nick Andre doing the, a slightly shorter undercut. I know that he works, as it has worked historically, with that 8-car of Michael Conti. So maybe testing something for Conti for the second round of pit stops. Michael kind of went with, the general strategy. It seemed like everyone opted for that first time down pit road. Didn't really do a big undercut. Came down about 1 lap earlier than Bobby Zilinski. But Andre came down about 2 to 3 laps earlier than everybody. And right now he's settling his way into third. I think he's basically up 3, maybe 2 or 3 spots from where he was before he hit pit road. If this works out for him, I would not be surprised to see the 8 of Michael Conti respond and do a similar thing here in about 15 laps time when he comes down for his second pit stop and probably try to undercut Bobby Zilinski by about 3 to 4 laps. It's going to be tough for that 8-car to try and hold off the 18-car should he do that. But I think it's the only call the 8-car really has at the moment with the gap Bobby has, outside of praying the 18 catches bad luck with traffic.
You just saw a replay there of Roval. We've been talking about him a few times tonight, and it has not been in the best of lights, and that engine grenaded at a turn number 2 on the oval. Repeated pieces of contact probably didn't help his case. And Alfala's brought that car down to the pit lane, so his night may very well be done. A rough go, and you could say that, well, he's not fighting for the championship, so it's not that huge of a deal, but you go back to the points we were talking about entering this evening. Ray was 22nd in the championship, 2 points behind a spot that would lock him into this series next season. A DNF tonight would put him at an incredible position in 2 weeks at Homestead, Tim, to not only have missed a shot at defending his title this season, but to not even walk in and be forced to relegate back to the Pro Series in the winter.
If there's any good news for Ray Alfala, Ryan Lowe's not having a good run. Michael Guest is not having a great run this evening either. He's in 29th. Dylan Duval's in 22nd. Phil Diaz not having a bad night in 17th place. So there are some drivers that are having some okay nights, but for Ray Alfala, those drivers that are around him, for the most part, not having spectacular evenings, as you see the 6 car of Zach Novak battle with Phil Diaz. We talked about Diaz being on the bubble outside in position number 23. If he can get up on the horse here and have a good run, he might be able to get into the top 20 leading in to that final race at Homestead. But as we saw with Ray Alfala, we might have just seen his chances of locking himself directly into the 2020 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series go up in smoke down the back straightaway here at Charlotte. But you better believe Ray Alfala has had some really good runs at Homestead. He is going to be up on the wheel, and you better believe that he's going to try to lock himself in the easier way through that last race.
Despite the fact that, as you mentioned, Diaz is a driver in his own fight, but not the same fight that Zach Novak's in. Another position gained for the number 6 Ford Mustang, big in his hopes of just trying to survive this race and maintain his top 4 spot to fight for a championship in 2 weeks' time. So something else to note, we mentioned it earlier, which may be the most entertaining points battle of the night. Again, as they sit, Zilinski would get the bye. He would bump all the way from dead last to the very top. Everybody else would trickle down a spot, and the two-way tie that we had coming into tonight for 3rd and 4th would become for 4th and 5th. And right now, Garrett Lowe is running 8th on track, 1 position ahead of 9th placed runner Blake Reynolds. As the live points sit, these 2 drivers, one of them would be sent home, and one of those drivers would be whoever finishes behind the other. This fight for 8 has a lot on the line, and Reynolds was better by a couple of tenths the last time, making it an intriguing battle for 8th and 9th.
And Blake's got to be patient here. We know out of Indianapolis, we saw him run out of fuel coming off turn 4, so close to being the first of your playoff drivers to pick up a win and lock yourself into Homestead, but unfortunately it didn't pan out. So now Blake, he just needs to put the head down. If you're the crew chief talking to that number 30 car, you need to tell him to be focused. You see that number 28 out in front of you getting bigger and bigger in the windshield. Don't overcook your tires. Just hit your marks. Still a lot of ways to go in this race, 40 laps to go. Don't get over antsy and make a mistake that potentially takes you out of this thing. You need to make sure you're there on lap 63, 64, and 65 to be able to fight with that 28 car, and Lord knows who else you might have to handle, as you still have the 46 of Jimmy Mullis. He's not far up the road, only a few seconds up there. You have a couple other playoff contenders, only about 10 or so seconds back, in the likes of Ryan Luza and Zach Novak. Those 2, by the way, are about to be fighting through each other through this middle part of the lap. The 6 are trying to bounce back from being the worst of their playoff qualifiers. Going to be taking on the 53 here in the next lap or so.
Yeah, he is closing the gap a little bit as they're in the infield portion. Luz's last lap was a 1:15.608. It was a .359 for Novak. So that Performance Plus motor oil entry is doing its job, and will continue to try to march forward. Luz actually really one of the only drivers who qualified and then didn't race trim as well. He started 8th position and has since fallen to 16th. Not what he needs if he hopes to make it in as the 5th place driver in the championship coming into this evening. And if you ask me, throughout the season, who's the best driver? Who's got maybe the favorite to become the champion, Tim? Before we started this round of 8, Ryan Luz's name's got to be at the top of the list, but because the way the format works, not the greatest of weeks. At Darlington and Indianapolis put him behind into a track that he probably knew ahead of time wasn't going to be his strong suit. So it really hurt him those last 2 weeks, and he's doing everything that he can.
Yeah, and especially at the end of the regular season, too. He kind of fell off a little bit. Keegan Leahy kind of poured the pressure on. and was a little closer up near the front and kind of had that momentum compared to Ryan Luza. And now we see Keegan Leahy up in the top 5 here this evening trying to chase down Nick Ottinger. That would be a battle for position number 3 here at the Roval if he can get up there. And he closed in a ton of time right there on that number 47 of Nick Ottinger. So we'll see what happens between that battle there. But I think the wild card sort of in this battle is Zach Novak. When you were talking about that point battle in between those two that were tied for that 4th place position, or what would be 4th place position, Zach Novak was only 7 points ahead, and Zach Novak right now is running in position number 17. So if you're the 6th car, you have to be aware of where your surroundings are as well. If you get up here with Ryan Luza, you really don't want to be mixing it up a whole lot with him and maybe chance something happening to that position. Keep this car clean and bring it on home into Homestead and try to get yourself a $40,000 payday. Keep an eye on that 6 car. I think that might be the wild card in this little battle. We've got that focus on that potential tie in between there coming in, but I think this 6 car could play a factor in it too.
And something that a casual viewer to this series you may not be aware of, and we allude to it often, Randy, but again, there is so much going on behind the scenes. Not only do you have the driver in his simmering at home competing in this race and giving it 110%, trying to muscle this car around the track, but there is so much behind the scenes in these teams. Live spotters, somebody else, another person somewhere in the country loaded into the service with you, live spotting for you. You've got crew chiefs and all of those different people come into play, not only when we discussed what would Zilinski do strategy-wise early, but also in this case for Novak, and definitely in the case of Garrett Lowe and Blake Reynolds, letting those drivers know what the point situation is. That is if the driver wants to know. He may say, listen, I don't want to know what the point situation is, I'm going to drive, but when it is this close between those two primarily, but as well with how much Zach Novak's finishing position plays, not only into his fate, but the others' fates as well, you have to be giving the driver this information.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's not just like you said. It may not just be a single person just going down, and we can see this information in the sim. 6 is Zach Novak. He has Logan Cheats and Brandon Coppinger on hand, helping him out. You have the likes of Bobby Zilinski. You talk about him being good on the road courses. You want a big name to help you on the road course. Currently on top of the virtual toolbox is Martin Kroenke helping out that 18 car. So maybe that's why Bobby's gotten so quick. He's got one of the most dominant drivers in road racing at the moment on hand. But it's definitely a thing. A lot of these guys, you're going to have crew chiefs on hand, and typically on the ovals, their primary job might be to calculate fuel and come up with tire strategy. Another big point here for these playoff contenders, it's just going to be calculating points and trying to figure out if you're in or if you're out, and basically telling you, okay, you know what, we need you to push, or you know what, you can back off a little bit, just bring it home.
Kind of amazing in that exchange for 8th and 9th, just how even they have been. But Blake Reynolds is closing on him, trying to catch up to Garrett Lowe. Again, if something happens with Zilinski, this could all be for nothing. They could both go in, but I think they're both aware now that as the live points sit, only one of them can move on, and they are nose to tail. They do have a little bit of a buffer, so they're behind Casey Kerwood by 3 seconds. They don't need to worry about him, but Brad Davies also in the 88 machine for Junior Motorsports, he could be a big factor also. If he's faster than both of these cars, he could end up being a buffer in between them if he's able to get around Reynolds. If he passes both of them, he could back up one or the other, try to make that pass. So there's a lot on Davies here also if he's going to engage with those cars.
And Brad Davies has a lot to fight for here this evening as they go around. I believe that's Cody Bias in the 24 car. You look at the Brad Davies situation right now, Evan. We talked earlier about that top 20 bubble and some of those drivers around that top 20 bubble not really having the best of nights right now. Brad Davies is up on that battle by, I believe, 16 points. That's not a whole lot. If something does happen here or something does happen at Homestead, he jeopardizes himself of not getting into this series directly through into 2020. He would have to go through the Pro Series. So if he can have a good night here and keep this car clean, it's not going to be a lot going into Homestead, but it's going to be pretty darn close for that number 88 Junior Motorsports car. So not only are these two in front fighting for a playoff spot and a potential shot at $40,000, Brad Davies is fighting to not be relegated into the Pro Series. So a lot on the line in this battle. Two different point championship battles per se, but they're all fighting for a position here at the Roval, and they want to move up a couple of spots here. We're getting close to that halfway point as well, so you got to keep in mind another pit stop coming up as well. Position yourself to try to get up ahead of these drivers and try to make up some time before that pit stop happens.
Your pit stop window may be about 6 or 7 laps away. Closer to lap 40 would put us on par with, splitting the race into thirds and deciding to go with the 2-stopper to get to the end of this one. So in just a lap or so, once we get the cross flags, we'll recap everything that's happened and take a look top to bottom at your midway race break. Zilinski is also catching up to traffic. He's got Nathan Lyon, the Latarde Sports driver. Saw him coming from a mile away, pulled out of the way. Great sportsmanship there to allow the 18 car through. Eric Smith next up, and Casey Tucker for position are going to go side by side for P26 into turn 1. Smith gets the spot as Zilinski ends up on the scene.
Yeah, so Bobby's going to have to be patient here. First time he's really having to deal with intense traffic. He gets to the inside of the 19 through this first part of the infield section, able to get clear, and now set his sights on the 51. The fact that he's able to pretty much split them rather than have to deal with them simultaneously is going to be a big breath of fresh air. But you guys mentioned the fact that we're coming up on the pit stop window. I think if you're the Ada Michael Connie, your situation right now, crew chief's telling you know what, we're on the outside looking in right now. I think if you're Michael, you have to throw the Hail Mary here and pit 3, 4, maybe even 5 laps earlier than maybe you're intending to, and try to really undercut Bobby and just try to cut him off when he eventually comes down pit road. Of course, Zilinski, he's in a position he can wait a lap or two, then come down and come in. But I think if you're Michael, you can't just do a regular strategy right now and hope you get your way into these playoffs. I think you have to really make it a big effort to try to beat the 18 here rather than everybody else, because you have to win this race at this point pretty much to get yourself into Homestead.
And the other drivers in the playoffs aren't showing any indications of dropping back. He's still about 9 out in 5th position right now as the live points would sit. An undercut by about 3 or 4 laps could do the difference. Keep in mind, if Conti pits and Zilinski follows him up, you can only short pit by how much that car in front of you will allow you to. But that time by, with 33 laps done, we are halfway home at the Roval. So let's take a look at our iRacing midway race break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally sanctioned series by the likes of NASCAR and many more. At lap number 34, Bobby Zilinski has led all the way. He's 5.8 seconds ahead of Michael Conti. Those two drivers bind for only 1 ticket by the win into the Championship 4. Nick Ottinger up to the number 3 spot. The 47 car has made some strides on this run, and Keegan Leahy behind in 4th, trying to hold off Logan Clampett, who sits P5. That is a great battle right now. Casey Kerwood behind them in 6th. Jimmy Mullis is in 7th. And then that other points battle for 4th in the standings. Garrett Lowe, Blake Reynolds tied into tonight. Lowe 1 spot up as they fight at the tail end of the top 10, ahead of Brad Davies there in 10th.
You got Matt Boos in position number 11, Christian Chalner the last time by running in position number 12. That's Ashton Crowder, Corey Vincent, and Jarl T in your top 15. Ryan Luza has fallen back to 16 from where he started in 8th. Zach Novak and Phil Diaz have actually swapped position number 17 on the last lap by, and Diaz is pulled away by about 3 lengths over that 6th of Zach Novak. Benjamin Nelson in position number 19, and 20th is Michael Grillia.
Chris Shearburn sits 21st with Dylan Duvall in 22nd. Jake Nichols in the 23rd spot. Taylor Hurst 24th, and Adam Benefield currently the final car on the lead lap in 25th. And you have Eric J. Smith, Nathan Lyon, Casey Tucker, Michael Guest, and Malik Ray. They round out your top 30 on the field.
Couple of cars still in this one. It includes Chris Overland's Ride Speed Ford, who is in 31st position, also a lap down, with Cody Bias there also in 32nd. Everybody else looks like they are out of this race. It includes Timmy Hill in 33rd, Ray Alfala 34th, and Brandon Cattell in P35. Brian Schoenberg finishes 36th, Nick Shelton 37th, and the first driver to hit the garage tonight, Ryan Lowe, shotgun on the field in position number 38. That's been a look top to bottom at your iRacing midway race break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com and sign up today. You can use promo code PR-eNASCAR 2019 to get your first 3 months as a new member for just $10. Again, that's PR-eNASCAR 2019. That applies on new iRacing memberships only. Hop on, join us on the service, hit the Roval. before it actually gets some track time this upcoming weekend. This portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Blue Def Diesel Exhaust Fluid, certified pure #1 diesel exhaust fluid. And now we play the waiting game. Lap number 36. We are well within the window, Tim. Fuel numbers to go to the end. But these drivers probably going to try to stretch 4 more or so before they come down for the final time.
It's a matter of where everybody comes down pit road. Who do you undercut? When do you come down onto pit road? If you're at the back, do you try to throw a Hail Mary? If you're in a battle like this one between Garrett Lowe and Blake Reynolds with potentially a $40,000 mistake or vice versa on the line to lock yourself into Homestead or not, when do you come down onto pit road? Do you get into the mind of the other driver and come down a lap early or a lap later? This is where it's all going to come down to. We've seen it before on strategy. I think Randy alluded to it a little bit earlier with Blake Reynolds and the fuel strategy not working out for him, coming feet short at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It could very well come down to strategy here where you undercut one driver or you don't. And this battle has continued to be intriguing. That 88 of Brad Davies still a part of this 3-car battle for what is 8th, 9th, and 10th right now. This one's intense, and I'm sure it's going to go down to the end of this race at the Roval.
And it might be a little bit too easy for us, Randy, to say go for the shortcut. I think Conti's case may be a little bit more clear-cut. 7.5 seconds ain't going to help, but it has looked like on this run that Reynolds is a little bit better than Lowe. Again, the gap was much larger. He closed it in, and it's kind of sat steady here at about this 4 or 5 car length differential. You go for the undercut, you probably end up in front of him. Do you have faith that you can run away thereafter, or is your concern that, maybe I'd rather be the guy hunting for the bumper late in the race, and I don't want him on my bumper? All of these come into consideration, but these two drivers continue, I think, to be the most compelling battle on the racetrack and in the points.
It definitely is, and it's really depends on what you as a driver prefer. Some people like having that car out ahead of them that they can chase down. Other people like to have clear racetrack. It really depends on driver to driver and what your preference is. That said, coming to the final stint of the race, knowing that we're basically in a situation where whichever one of us finishes ahead of the other is likely punching the ticket to Homestead, I want to be ahead for that final 25-lap run to the end of the race. That puts you in a deep defensive mode, but I want to be the driver setting the standard for the strategy here. I want to be the one executing the undercut and not the one who has to react to what the other driver has done. And I think if you're the driver in the hot seat and the driver in the catbird seat in that sense is going to be this 30 of Blake Reynolds being right off the back. He doesn't have a 8-second gap like Garrett Lowe doesn't have like an 8-second gap like what Bobby Zilinski has to work with. Blake can pretty much hit pit road and Garrett won't be able to do anything about it. Blake can more or less guarantee a short pit should he decide to do so.
And we continue to play the waiting game to watch at lap number 38. Zilinski, the first car at what is turn 4 on the oval, turn 14 on the road course, opting not to come down to pit road. Conti staying it out for at least one more lap also. Good battle as well for P6 on track. Jimmy Mullis in that Sim Seats Toyota all over the back of Casey Kerwin. Those two cars just coming out of the chicane and heading to the front stretch chicane out of the turn number 4. And the 46 not hunting that time, but Kerwin is backed up to Mullis in the last couple of laps.
And Jimmy Mullis begins to pour a little bit of pressure on for that 6th place position. Keep in mind, Jimmy Mullis is one of those playoff drivers as well. Should something crazy happen here in these remaining laps, Jimmy Mullis could find himself backing into a spot at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Just a quick note, Brad Davies in the number 88 had a quick slide into NASCAR 1 the last time. He lost touch of that battle, which is behind this battle. Casey Kerwin and Jimmy Mullis. Garrett Lowe and Blake Reynolds continue to battle, but Brad Davies lost a little bit of time on that battle. There's a 46, sent it in, gave a little shot to the iRacing Peak number 14 of Casey Kerwin. He means business.
I'm curious if that's a move that Allgaier taught him. Those Richmond Raceway esports drivers got a really cool opportunity to take to the racetrack after this past race weekend over at Richmond Raceway. A very cool opportunity for both Jimmy Mullis and Malik Ray. Ray running back in 30th position in his entry. He actually just get it out of the way now to allow some of your race leaders to go on by. So all these different race teams, esports organizations, a part of this campaign for 2019, giving a lot of these drivers some really cool opportunities. Keegan Leahy is on pit road from P5. He is, I think, the first driver top 10 to come down.
definitely looks that way. So Keegan Leahy hits pit road, giving the first one to set the standard. Now, unfortunately, if you're Michael Conti, we know that 62 and the 18, they work together, and we know that it's likely if Keegan's coming down pit road, Bobby's probably going to be thinking about it pretty soon as well. So if you're the 8 car of Michael Conti, I have to be wondering. I think this 8 car may have waited a little bit too long to try to make this shortcut happen. So we may just be in some ways handing this to the 18 car.
We'll see if this is how it plays out. Again, Conti maybe not wanting to take the risk of 15 more laps into this run. We're about equidistant. In fact, further than what we saw in the first one. Drivers started to come down pit road at lap 18. Your leaders really didn't commit till 21 to 22. That's why we thought the window maybe was open for them to stretch it for the one stopper. So to stay on that same length, you're looking at the next 4 laps for them to come down to the pit lane, and that would put them at about a 20-lap run to the end of the race. So that all makes sense, but if you have to go for the undercut, how much of a gamble is it worth to you? Kerwin, Mullis still fighting for P5 and 6. Behind them, Garrett Lowe in the number 28 machine now finds himself with some space in that battle that we had been following for quite some time, because the car behind him, Blake Reynolds, has fallen to P11. So something happened with Reynolds, guys, in that 30 machine has dropped way off, and he made a pit stop. So a short pit call for him. He's trying to undercut in that fight for P8.
Yeah, the battle between Kerwin and Mullis now becomes a battle for position number 3 for the time being, as Ottinger and Clampett came onto pit road that last time by. Bobby Zilinski in the 18 remains on the racetrack, as does Michael Conti. But Casey Kerwin is so good on these high speed areas. This 46 of Jimmy Mullis so good in the infield, as the lap down drivers battling ahead of Bobby Zilinski. Almost had a moment between Ryan Luza and the 33 of Ben Nelson. He gets clear of that through NASCAR 3 and 4, and he's going to stay out on the racetrack, but a close call there between, I believe it was Luza and Ben Nelson.
And that was right in front of Bobby Zilinski. Luza got on those curbs too hard. I mentioned watch him on the right-hander right there. Those blue curbs, both the cars get the right sides up. But, Luza really smoked him. Ben Nelson got into the back of him, all right in front of Bobby Zilinski. So he could have very easily made contact there. Michael Conti is now in from second position. He was 8 seconds behind Zilinski on track. He'll go for the short pit, I would imagine, to kind of quash this move. Zilinski would come right down to the pit lane next time to not even allow Conti to get remotely close to him.
And that's the advantage Bobby has with this 8-second lead, is that he's pretty much in the normal window now. Conti waited so long to make that call that now Bobby, he can just sit there and come down pit road at his leisure within the next 1 to 2 laps, and he's pretty much going to have the short pit cut off. That's why I've been saying I think the 8 needs to come down pit road early and really pressure the 18 car into responding, or essentially having the 18 car, if he wants to come down early, or excuse me, at his normal time, he's going to end up giving up the race lead with the speed difference we're seeing. But the 18 through 3 and 4, he knows the 8's on pit road. Think he's checking up early, and here comes that Joe Gibbs Racing Interstate Batteries number 18 towards pit road for his final pit stop before we head to Homestead.
And that's a smart move. Zilinski's last lap was a 118.9. That is some nearly 5 seconds slower than the best lap of the race he ran after pit stops last time through. So he knows if he stayed out for 2 laps, Michael Conti could have eradicated that 8-second deficit. So he follows him down pit road. This will be the final stop for Bobby Zilinski, who has ran a perfect race thus far. Maybe a little bit of a moment where his heart was in his throat that last time with a close call down in the chicane, but at no fault of his own, he's done exactly what he's needed to do. He'll exit pit lane and look to run to the end of this race, as now Casey Kerwin assumes the tentative race lead at lap 43.
Is going to assume the lead, but never led that last lap, with Bobby Zilinski crossing the line before Casey Kerwin did. So we'll see if Kerwin stays out and tries to lead 1 lap here and pick up a bonus point, albeit he and Ottinger battling for what would be position number 9 in the standings, locked in to the top 20 after their seasons thus far. But obviously, if you can try to pick up another position or 2, you're going to try to do so. But we'll see how far Casey Kerwin decides to stretch it here, as he is on lap 43 on the racetrack, heading down the back straightaway towards the chicane. And we'll see if he decides to peel off to pit road this time or if he stays out on the racetrack. But with everybody else, the majority of the top 10 coming down to pit road, he would anticipate that 14 car to start looking towards pit road this time.
It may be the biggest championship update that we'll give you all night as we wait for the rest of this to cycle through. And Casey Kerwin is in. That Blake Reynolds in the 30 car came down pit road early. He has now undercutted Garrett Lowe. So Lowe had been leading over him in a battle that right now is for 10th and 11th position, where only one of those drivers being tied in the points tonight could advance to the championship 4. Reynolds pitted sooner, went out there, put down a hot lap, and he has passed Garrett Lowe. So Reynolds is now 10th. Lowe has to chase in P11 for his championship hopes.
So after the 28, it's going to be the inverse. Remember, I was talking about that the crew chief and spotters is at number 30 need to be in his ears telling him to keep calm, put his head down, just hit your mark. Same needs to happen with the 28 of Garrett Lowe right now. He needs the crew chief spotters saying he pit early. His tires, are going to start falling off a lap or two earlier before yours. You're going to have a window that you can pressure here and get to him. Just stay calm, wait for your opportunity inside of this final 20 laps, and then when you eventually get there, do not hesitate, just send it. I expect if he gets there, the 28 is going to show a big nose into one of these heavy braking zones inside this final 20-lap run.
And if there's one driver that I know that's going to be not going to be afraid to throw it blocks to him, it's Blake Reynolds. Of course, you go back to Indianapolis with so much on the line. Not only is, there's $500 up for grabs at any race win, so that was a factor, but Blake Reynolds was blocking to keep his championship hopes alive, and maybe controversial at the end. Kerwin got collected, and it was Corey Vincent who went on to victory lane. Garrett Lowe knows that the 30 car has been dishing it out these playoffs. He can't be timid if he gets a realistic opportunity to maybe use the bumper to get on him. But just think of the pressure that both of these drivers are dealing with right now. They know a lot of the time there's math and we have an estimate of the live points, but these two are tied. You have to beat the other driver for a shot to win $40,000 live on national television in 2 weeks' time. Probably their hearts are beating in maybe the most pressure-packed moments of their sim racing careers as they go at it.
And who may be the biggest fan of these two right now, if they were to get into some sort of little bit of a shoving match, would be Michael Conti. Conti is trying to get up and maybe outpoint these two. So if these two get into a little bit of a push and shove and they end up in the infield or they end up in the outside wall, Michael Conti could very well point himself in. So got to keep an eye on all those point situations, but Garrett Lowe is up on the wheel trying to throw it into the chicane in the back straightaway. Can't get to the bumper just yet on Blake Reynolds, but gained a ton of time there. We'll see if Reynolds can pull away with that position. He pulls away by about 3 lengths, so Garrett Lowe looks like he may have gained just a wee bit there in that braking zone, but keep in mind that number 30 of Reynolds, the 28 of Lowe, they have to keep it relatively clean, not only for that shot of $40,000 for themselves, but to try to keep Michael Conti on the outside looking in to that spot for Homestead.
And you can see at the top of your screen, these are the unofficial points as they run. Again, Zilinski was 8th. He jumps up to the number 1 position with the automatic bye. Leahy in okay. Novak only 5 above the cut line as he tries to finish this race out, but has been struggling in keeping his position. He is 17th on track, and then these two, Lowe behind Reynolds for the final transfer spot. Then the intervals grow a little bit. You got Conti, minus 11. He needs to win it. Luza, minus 22. Mullis, minus 24. Those are your unofficial live points. And all of this hanging in the fact that the 18 car is leading this race still by 6.2 ahead of Conti.
The thing that's great is that all of these playoff drivers, all 8 names we just rattled off there, are inside of your top 20. So none of them have had really a bad effort, and that's what I think some of these drivers need. You see these guys still so close and on top of each other as they head through NASCAR 3 and 4. The 28th of Garrett Lowe lost a little bit of time that time through that back straightaway chicane. He's going to have to back it off a little bit, keep those tires underneath them, and get ready to set another assault here in the not near future. Maybe use that 14 of Casey Kerwin who's coming through as a pick.
And that's a big factor also. You got these two catching up on cars. You mentioned, other drivers as well getting into the picture. It was Davies at first who kind of really lost himself in this cycle. Brad Davies falling to 14th position, who was, of course, the third car in the mix here. Low hanging it out that time. Kicking the back end out as Kerwin has been better than these cars by a significant margin, a 3 to 4 tenths of a second every single lap. He's going to pass them. Going to get by them clean, and how hard will they make this for the 14 car to complete? This final portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Herculiner Truck Bed Liner. The tough comes easy, and a three-way fight is on for 7th.
The 14 of Casey Kerwin is closed in on this little battle between the 28 of Garrett Lowe and Blake Reynolds in that number 30. And it's going to be intense. And I know Casey Kerwin knows that these drivers are battling for a playoff position, but he also wants to get up here and get a top 5 run potentially by the end of this one. He's got a long way to go to get to that top 5. He's got about 15 seconds or so to catch Keegan Leahy, but wants 2 more positions and move himself a little bit closer to what would be a top 5 run here this evening. So keep an eye on that 14 as he tries to tiptoe his way through. It looks like Evan, the last couple laps, he's been a wee bit quicker as he looked to the inside of the 28 that time. Nothing doing there, though.
When he knows that the 28's got his sights set on the 30 in front, so he's not going to flash at those and try to make a move with the risk that that spot's not going to be given to him. There's the spot. Low sees him coming, and there's a little bit of a hold up there, and this time by the 28 stays in front of Kerwin, but that cost him a valuable 2-car length difference to Reynolds. And this is where for Kerwin, you're in a tough spot because you want to go, just make that pass, get the position. That's exactly what you have the right to do in that number 14 machine. Now into the chicane, the 28 lets him go, knowing full well that as Kerwin passes him, he'll have to do the same to Reynolds in a few laps, but those two have now really gone spread apart.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, I think it was a 28 car in a rough position there. Yeah, they're the championship contenders, but Casey Kerwin, he has every right to get in there. We know that 14 car has been quick. He's just fallen off, I think, a little bit with the tire strategy. Maybe had a little repairs on that race car last trip down pit road, or just a bad pit stop. He's fallen down the order just a bit, and he's trying to work his way back forward. That's all on Garrett Lowe right there. Let the 14 by, try to keep with him, and then when the Casey eventually shows that nose to the 30, try to go for it. That said, how hard is Casey going to pressure this 30 car of Blake Reynolds? That's a duo that we know works together historically.
And we'll see if the 30 car could get out of the way sooner. That first move by the 14 machine was trying to pass Lowe, who really wasn't expected it, and fought him off. Here's a good look, but the 14 can't do it. And here comes Lowe now, closing in once more. Kerwin is going to have to get out of the middle and between these cars, or if I'm the 28 machine Lowe, I'm going to move him out of the way to get back to Reynolds. This is where it happened last time. The 30 car sees that he's faster, brakes a little bit sooner, and tucks right into behind. So Kerwin has gotten around them, but now Lowe back on the end of the 30 car. About 3 car lengths is the difference.
And didn't lose a ton of time, and maybe more importantly, did not lose that position to Garrett Lowe, and still has a couple of car lengths heading into this final chicane to complete lap number 49 on the racetrack. Garrett Lowe to close in through that braking zone, and a little slide into that final corner across the start-finish line to the inside, takes a peek, little contact, and the 28 car going to go for a slide.
He tried the move in the turn 1, he got into him, but he wasn't able to hang on, and was that Garrett Lowe's only opportunity, because that big slide cost him tons of time, as Reynolds now is going to open up the gap in the fight for 8th and 9th position. He gave him room, Garrett Lowe maybe tried to give him a little nudge, and the 30 car in the end ends up on top in this battle, able to weather the storm on that attempt.
And that's what I was talking about, being patient and waiting for a good opportunity. That wasn't a good opportunity for the 28 of Garrett Lowe. Yeah, there was half a door open there, but it was half a door open with 15 laps to go. A move like that, I wouldn't like to see Garrett sending a move like that until it's the final lap of the race. With 15 laps to go, though, better part of 20 minutes remaining, go for it.
He just completely missed the chicane on the back straightaway, and here comes Garrett Lowe. He'll go to the outside in 3 and 4 on the oval, side by side for 8th. It's going to be a game of chicken into the chicane on the front straightaway. Lowe's going to outbreak him. Is he going to make the corner? Yes, he will, but a crossover. Now it's Reynolds back to the inside, side by side again, and after the 30 car nearly threw it away, these two are going head to head.
Battling for a potential shot at $40,000 going into Homestead. Reynolds going to take the advantage this time. The 28 of Garrett Lowe now on the attack. Going to try to take a little peek to the inside. Nothing doing there. That 30 car of Blake Reynolds going to try to extend his advantage through the infield portion of this racetrack. Evan, they traded mistakes on that last lap. You've got to be perfect and flawless in these last 15 laps if you want to try to go to Homestead. And oh, by the way, here comes Casey Tucker in this battle. It's not for position, but Tucker, I believe, has a little fresher tires. He's closed in on this battle, and if they continue to trade mistakes, Christian Chalner's not too far behind.
First, it was Lowe who made the dive into turn 1 at an inopportune time, and he puts the bumper to him in the carousel. The 30 car gets loosened up on the back straightaway, and Garrett Lowe pushes the 30 out of the way. He'll come back on him now, and they are side by side again. He knew Reynolds would be timid, and now Reynolds looses him up on the banking. The 28 car Lowe is out of control. He's going to cut the corner to hang on to it, and he may have to give that spot back after Reynolds moved him on the banking. I think he'll let him go in 1 as they're side by side, and there it is. He had to let him get by, but now the 37 of Challenger goes through, and that was for position, and the 28 car with a big time penalty has to back way out of it.
Yeah, he cut the chicane big time there, so not a shock to see him get a 2 to 3 second slowdown penalty. We don't typically see that in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series, but it's something that's very, very big and very important on the road courses. So the 28 car now, he's only 4 or 5 car lengths back, maybe a little bit more, but he has to chase down the 19 car. He's got a lapper of Casey Tucker in front of him, and now Christian Challenger is involved with this fight with the number 30 of Blake Reynolds. Blake's best play right here is if Christian's quicker when he gets to him, let the 37 car go. Don't get bogged down fighting with him, and manage this gap to the 28 of Garrett Lowe.
And that 30 machine is going to try to use those, I guess now just that 1 car as a buffer. But man, what a 2 laps with Garrett Lowe, of course, first catching back up to Reynolds on the mistake. He bumped him out of the way. It was well executed as they went into the chicane on the back. I think he knew that the 30 was going to be timid, having blown it the lap prior, pushed him, and then the payback came from Reynolds where he loosened him up in the corner just enough so that the 28 machine had to try to save that race car and was unable to make the corner. Therefore, he gets a penalty, has to back off, and the interval between those two now is 1.8 seconds. I'm not sure he can make that up with 12 laps to go next time by.
Randy hit the nail on the head, though, Evan. You look at that 37 of Christian Chalner. Obviously, he's not going to put himself in a position to hurt the 30's chances of Blake Reynolds in this playoff run. But you better believe if he has a faster race car, he's going to try to pick a spot and try to get by. If they have a little bit of a set to, it'll close in Garrett Lowe. But on the opposite hand, you have Garrett Lowe back there trying to drive the wheels off this thing to get up here and possibly contend with Blake Reynolds and potentially a spot in the final round of the playoffs. But you've got to make sure you don't make a mistake, because if you make a mistake, that's going to dash your chances at potentially making Homestead. And oh, by the way, Ashton Crowder's not too far behind either from Garrett Lowe in that number 28. So if you're Blake Reynolds, if you're Garrett Lowe, you have to make sure you do not make any more mistakes. And right now, Garrett Lowe is playing chase. If you're Blake Reynolds, bring this thing home clean and try to lock yourself into Homestead. 2 incredibly great battles here closing in at the end of this one.
Last lap was a 16.7 for Reynolds, a 16.8 for Garrett Lowe. Blake Reynolds is pulling away in that fight for the 4th and final transfer position into the championship 4. And the mistakes by these playoff drivers tonight have been few and far in between. Remember, for most of this race, these guys ran nose to tail without incident, but a lot of mistakes all at once. And next thing you know, big championship implications. More battling on track sees Jarl Teen and Brad Davies doing battle for 12th and 13th position. Vincent Busa and company all lined up. Zach Novak is not that far behind. He sees a lot of potential points.
He definitely does, but if you're Zach Novak, I think the last thing you want to be getting involved here late in this race is a big 4-car gaggle, because we know Zach Novak is safe on the points as he runs. So as we approach 10 laps to go, is look at the 66 up the inside of Brad Davies. He's about to get freight trained. The 27 of Corey Vincent tries to take advantage. Look at that move down in towards the chicane as they head down towards the front straightaway chicane next. And, well, they're going to just get about single filed out, and they're pretty much going to involuntarily drag the 6 into this.
Yeah, and I know that it's a deepened, chicane on the back straightaway, but I'm still not sure if it's built for 2x2 like that. And you can see on the outside, it really didn't work out there for the 88 car Davies, who's trying. He'll now look to get around the 27. Corey Vincent, race winner 2 weeks ago at Indianapolis. But if I'm Zach Novak as well, I'm a little bit nervous seeing all of this. Yes, my advantage to be in the playoffs or not is down to single digits. Yes, these spots would really help with the way these guys are racing. I don't want to get sent to the garage because of an incident.
Yeah, you put yourself on the wrong side of the inch like we almost saw between Lowe battling up there with Reynolds. You end up on the wrong side of the inch if you are Zach Novak, and you end up outside of the playoff picture as he sees the 27 of Corey Vincent go up the racetrack right ahead of him, the 5 of Matt Busa. That was a close call between those two, and now Novak sets his forward, or at least took a peek that time to the inside of the 27 as they come up on the back straightaway chicane. And it looks like Zach Novak just trying to methodically and potentially pick up a position if he can, but right now looking pretty good for that number 6 of Zach Novak. He's got to keep that car clean and try to advance into the playoffs. I know he has that in the back of his mind.
That time by for race leader Bobby Zilinski. It was 10 laps to go at the Roval, the only venue that hosts 2 races on the calendar this year. Of course, on the oval earlier in the season, Keegan Leahy took home the race win, number 8 on the season, as he took home the $500 prize for that one. But of course, the Roval is a whole new ball game, and it has been thrilling since the last time we were down and onto pit road. Zilinski's advantage over Conti still steady at 6.6 seconds over the car in P2, who is seeing the door on his championship hopes start to dwindle as this race gets down to the home stretch. Again, everybody on strategy, good to the end. There are no yellows. This one's going to be raced out, and you wonder with how good those playoff drivers were, and then the mistakes came aplenty. If you're Zilinski and Conti, how focused can you stay to maintain a perfect race?
You're going to have to stay focused, that's for sure, as these guys work their way around here. But, talking about the fact that these drivers, the likes of the 28 and the 30, and also the 6 of Zach Novak, about how much those drivers don't want anything sketchy to happen around them, and they need to make sure they make it to the end of the race. You know that Michael Conti running second, 3 names he'd love to see get tangled with one another are Blake Reynolds, Garrett Lowe, and Zach Novak, or at least get tangled in some way and find the way down to the garage. Of course, maybe not hoping that beyond the fact that that's the way he gets his way out to Homestead.
But of course, as we look to close our season at Homestead in 2 weeks' time, you've got real-life NASCAR action coming up on the Roval this week. Tonight's drama could be just a small preview of what you'll see this Sunday, 2:30 Eastern on NBC.
It's time to start the playoffs here.
Let's go get them. You got to make sure that you've got full strength.
16 drivers with a chance at the championship. They make contact.
You've become more aggressive, lots of beating and banging.
A drag race, they're sideways. And there's trouble off third part. Up and into the air.
You have to perform, or poof, it's over.
We're going to have a side-by-side race to the checkered flag.
Better bring it.
And back live from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval as the round of 8 gets set to conclude tonight for the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. You've been watching quite the event so far tonight. Back with you on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Sports Network. Evan Pasoko, Tim Terry, and Randy Jenneth upstairs with you. It has all been Bobby Zilinski out in front as he looks to put a bow tie on this one. More fighting throughout the pack. Jarl T and Zach Novak for 14th and 15th. Novak looking for some critical championship points to stay above the cut line. He hopes to join race leader Bobby Zilinski, Keegan Leahy, and of course the battle that we've been talking about since then, Blake Reynolds as the championship 4.
Zach Novak picked up a position a couple laps ago on Corey Vincent after he got loose, and now he's put the pressure on Jarl T. And this battle was about a 4 or 5 car battle, if you can remember, Evan. Back a few laps ago, Busa and Davies have kind of extended the gap a little bit, and they've extended the gap on each other. Brad Davies has about 4 lengths on Busa, and then back to this battle between Tian and Novak going at it for the spot. Novak going to throw it hard into the braking zone here on the front straightaway and try to make up a little bit more time on the 66, and he'll have a little slide coming towards the start-finish line and try to pile it down into corner number 1. But Zach Novak, if he can pick up this position, Evan, sure, it's an extra insurance point, but at this point, unofficially, he wouldn't need it. But everything can change if something does happen that somebody makes a little slide. So keep an eye on Novak and see if he can bring this thing home and bring it home maybe with one more extra position as he battles with Tian.
And another battle on track. Blake Reynolds is under fire. That fight for 8th on back is not done yet. Again, Reynolds was able to open the gap over low. He's still ahead by a 1.5 seconds. That is less, though, than what it was 5 laps ago. And Christian Challenger in the 37 is on the bumper. So the 37 doesn't want to be a factor. Just stay behind him. Don't worry about it. But if he'd like to get that extra point, he could very much go for the move on Reynolds. He'd probably be able to convince Blake to let him go, but it would have backed the 30 car up just a little bit more. And again, any sort of mistake on any of the 17 corners that you get around this place at about 1 minute and 17 seconds every single time, any small mistake could make that 1.5 seconds gap manageable.
And that gap is coming down. Last 2 laps, Garrett Lowe has reeled in at least a 1/10 over the 30 of Blake Reynolds, nearly 3.5 tenths the last 2 laps combined. So as the 30 used his stuff up a little bit, the 28 is getting there. Now you have the 4 of Nathan Lyon, a lapped car, kind of separating that 2-car gaggle between the 28 of Garrett Lowe, and actually really is a second 2-car group with the 77 of Ashton Crowder. So that's going to be something Garrett has to deal with here in just a moment. But that gap, the last couple laps coming down, Blake seemed to have the pace advantage. The last 4, 5, 6 laps around the racetrack, that seems to have stabilized and is now working on swinging the other way.
And the big thing is the cars in between them. Challenger on the back bumper of the 30, but also the 4 machine here as well as a lapped car. I don't think is going to be as big of a factor. Nathan Lyon's been very courteous to these lead lap cars. He's damaged and a lap down, so he'll move the RacingJobs.com Chevy up and out of the way and let the 28 go. But Garrett Lowe is also trying to hold off Ashton Crowder. So both Challenger and Crowder have a situation here. Do they challenge the car in front of him that has a lot on the line in the playoffs, Tim, or do they just sit back and let things take their course?
Well, you're coming up on less than 5 laps to go right now in between these battles. I think if you're Ashton Crowder, you want to get one more position and, try to get a little bit closer to what could be a top 20 position in this series and lock yourself in for next year. The same deal with Christian Challenger. Challenger's a little more safe when it comes to that top 20 battle. He's within the top 20 right now, a little closer to locking himself in. So if he can get a clean run here, it would be beneficial for that JTT Doherty driver in the 37. But Ashton Crowder needs every point that he can get, so the steady MD number 77 might be a little more apt to throw it in on Garrett Lowe in the number 28, and they are a couple of seconds in behind, so that may only be the 1 point they can get, and there's a nice shot. You look back at those battles there. If I'm the 77, I better believe that I'm going to send it in and try to get at least this 1 more point. It could be the difference from me racing in this series in 2020 and maybe me watching on the sidelines.
We saw that with Davies also earlier in this race, Randy, where, the primary concern that we're watching is the championship and how did the non-playoff drivers race around the playoff drivers. But it's not like you don't make the playoffs in the Cup Series and that's it. You try to get what you can. You go for race wins for your team. That's it. This eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series has that relegation where only the top 20 keep their ride and everybody else going to have to re-qualify in against a 20-car field of very hungry drivers coming for the road to pro. The bottom 20 from this series will go to the Pro Series and race with 20 other cars, 40 total, to try to re-qualify. So there is still a lot on the line for the non-playoff drivers, specifically in this iRacing series.
Yeah, for anyone from Europe, it's very much like the Premier League football system they have over there in that part of the world. Of course, anyone from the United States. I'm not talking about the football that's seeing quarterbacks drop like flies from starting lineups. I'm talking about the part what most people's kids do when they're growing up. It's a very similar system. You do well in the championship, you stay up there at the top level. If you don't do well, fall down below the bottom half, you get relegated down to a lower level and have to re-qualify your way back in. Now, that's not to say if you don't finish in the top 20 that we won't see these drivers in 2020. They will have the opportunity over the off season, of course, to run their way in. But of course, that's a heck of a lot more stress and, probably an off season that these guys would rather have, enjoying the likes of Thanksgiving and Christmas with their families and New Year's, of course, rather than having to spend testing in the 28's gotten there.
The 28 machine in this battle as Garrett Lowe has closed significantly, and again he's going to have to slow down. The 28 machine made the pass on Blake Reynolds, but once again he made contact in that chicane, and second time Garrett Lowe has to serve a course cut penalty, and it hands it right back to the 30 car. And again, Tim, like we saw last time, it's not like Garrett Lowe just drove through on his own. He actually got hit by Ashton Crowder. It loosened that car up, very similar to what happened last time.
And I'm sure Blake Reynolds saw that coming and maybe saw that championship hope fly against his eyes, but now he's got that 28 a little bit further back and he might be able to breathe a little bit easier. He's got Chalner now in front of him in the number 30, and if he stays where he is, he would unofficially lock himself into Homestead. So the 30 of Blake Reynolds, keep it clean for these next few laps and try to battle for $40,000 in a couple weeks' time. But up in front continues to be Bobby Zilinski, almost 9 seconds now on the field on Michael Conti. And we saw the 28 of Garrett Lowe, his playoff potential possibly slipping away. Michael Conti's essentially doing the same thing here as we close in on these final couple laps.
Inside of 2 laps to go for the rest of the field, and that may have been it for Lowe, as that time penalty now puts him over 3 seconds behind Blake Reynolds. Barring any sort of major issue, the 30 car could have coasted. Challenger was able to get up and around him, but for Bobby Zilinski, white flag in the air one more time around at Charlotte.
Yeah, what a performance from this 18 car, doing so well as he works through the first couple corners of the final lap here, getting ready to punch his ticket into Homestead. And Michael Conti in the 8 seconds back, hoping that 18 hiccups for the first time on a road course this season.
We'll get back through the infield section. Final time, a right-hander into turn number 5. Most importantly, Tim, clean track in front of him up to Phil Diaz. Zilinski heads out and onto the banking for the final time.
Zilinski trying to lock himself into Homestead has been so dominant here this evening, Evan, and it looks like he is going to punch that ticket in with a win, and then everybody else is going to have to try to chase Bobby Zilinski. He's had the target on the back all night long, and he may very well go into the Homestead Miami Speedway as the favorite for $40,000. He's clean through the back straightaway chicane. He comes up to NASCAR 3.
He had a great finish lined up 2 weeks ago, but Indianapolis ran out of fuel, finished high 30s. He came into tonight last in the playoffs, needing a win to fight for $40,000. And in the final chicane, Bobby Zilinski, with ice in his veins, is gonna do it. Zilinski walks off at the Roval and advances to the championship 4.
And what a run for him. This isn't done yet, though. The 77 of Crowder is close to the back of the 30 of Blake Reynolds. We just saw Ashton make a big move on the 28 car. Is he going to be patient with the 30 as they work in towards that the second to final chicane of this lap? Down the back straightaway for the final time. The 30 has a couple car lengths. Ashton won't send it here, but the run to the checkers, the 77 is going to get that run through 3 and 4.
He'll make the run out of the chicane. Final time up and onto the banking. The 77 already making contact in the battle with the 28 machine not that long ago. But Crowder's not going to force the issue, and Blake Reynolds may survive the fight to the end for the final spot as he comes home in 9th.
And it looks like that gap back is going to be about 3 seconds or so back to Garrett Lowe. Lowe is going to finish 11th here. Blake Reynolds going to finish in 9th, and Garrett Lowe pulls up right alongside that 77 of Crowder and gives him a little bit of room on this cool down lap. But nevertheless, the tough break for Garrett Lowe. But Evan, you can't blame Ashton Crowder. He's trying to do everything that he can to try to fight for a top 20 position in this series, and he was up on the wheel at the end of that one, trying to pick up those couple of positions. He'll finish 10th.
And at the end of the day, I don't think that contact really took the 28 out of it. He was still about a second and a half, Randy, off of Reynolds. It's not like he was on his bumper. The only reason he ended up passing him was because that shunt made him cut that chicane. So for Garrett Lowe, it came down to numerous times when he and Blake Reynolds, side by side, man to man, went after each other. And unfortunately, only one of those drivers could have come out on top. But how about the scene on the front straightaway? This man has not lost a road course race in 3 years. He's swept every trip in series history to Sonoma. And in the first race ever at the Roval, he gets the win as well. Bobby Zilinski had a ton of pressure coming into this race. Everybody telling him that he was the favorite. I'm sure he also felt like he was the favorite. Randy did not misstep a single corner tonight.
Have we seen him misstep in those 3 years of road course runnings? I don't think we've seen that 18 car make a mistake yet. He's had such gaps that he can do whatever he wants on strategy, but Bobby Zilinski, he's going to be happy. He came in 8th in the points, and he'll be going to Homestead with this win.
From the bottom to the top, Bobby Zilinski is your race winner tonight at Charlotte. Let's go and take a look at tonight's Race Spot TV full race results. It's Zilinski to victory lane, and Michael Conti, very good but not good enough to punch his ticket. He comes home second. Nick Ottinger finishes third. Logan Clampett fourth, and Keegan Leahy P5. We'll hope to chat with all of them in just a moment. The number 6 spot goes to Jimmy Mullis. Casey Kerwin finishes in 7th. Christian Challenger picks up a handful to go, P8. Blake Reynolds finishes 9th, and Ashton Crowder rounds out your top 10.
On the outside looking into the top 10 and potentially on the outside looking in on the playoffs would be Garrett Lowe, finishing in position number 11. Brad Davies picks up some points here this evening, coming home in 12th. Matt Busa, Jarl Tien, and Zach Novak finishes in 15th. Corey Vincent 16th. Ben Nelson in 17th. Phil Diaz had an up and down night here this evening. He comes home in 18th. Last driver on the lead lap, Michael Guerrilla in 19th, and Ryan Luza finishes in position number 20. And Randy, I believe he is your lowest finishing playoff driver of this first round, finishing here at the Roval.
Yeah, indeed he is. Dylan Duvall is going to come home in 21st, with Chris Shearburn in 22nd. Jake Nichols 23rd, Taylor Hurst in 24th, Eric J. Smith 25th, Adam Benefield 26th, Nathan Lyon in 27th, with Casey Tucker, Michael Guest, and Chris Overland rounding out through to the top 30.
Continuing on through the running order, 31st was Malik Ray, 32nd Cody Bias. The rest of these cars DNFing. It'll be Ray Alfala in 33rd, Timmy Hill 34th, to Brandon Cattell P35. Brian Schoenberg comes home 36th, Nicholas Shelton in 37th, and Ryan Lowe comes home in 38th position to round out the field this evening from Charlotte Motor Speedway. We knew that with the point structure, this race had a very good opportunity to come down to the wire. It did so not only in the battle for the race win, where if either Conti or Zilinski won it, it would have meant a ticket into the championship 4, but it also did so in other battles throughout the field, including that battle between Reynolds and Lowe that goes in favor of the 30 car. Let's go trackside now and talk with your race winner today from the Roval. Bobby Zilinski's able to do it, wins, and is into the championship finale. Bobby, congratulations.
Oh man, thanks. I worked really hard for this one. I was kind of just leading up to the race. I was really just trying to see if I could do what I do at Sonoma at another road course, and it's relieving for many reasons, but I'm just happy I was able to do it again.
You know, so many questions coming to this race for the first time. Of course, you mentioned that success at Sonoma that we've documented as well. But, you know, to come into this with confidence in your abilities, and then early on, you put a big gap on Michael Conti early. And, you know, now maybe you start to think a little bit too much of, you know, this is mine as long as I don't throw it away. How you're able to stay so calm and, most importantly, mistake-free. A lot of other playoff drivers, when it came down to it, made a lot of mistakes that were very critical in the points at the end. But that 18 machine was nearly perfect all night.
Yeah, I was feeling really comfortable. After I knew I had a bit of a pace advantage, I started to just try to drive smoother, not hit the curbs as hard, be careful, and just be safe. Because you don't, if you have that kind of pace advantage, you don't need to push it. You just need to maintain it, make sure your tires stay on it. So the rest of the race, once I built that gap, I was just trying to make sure I was being safe around the lapped cars, just hitting my line and not pushing it too hard, and that would then help my tire wear and be able to kind of, you know, keep Conti away. And yeah, that was pretty much my mindset after about 15 laps. And I just wanted to bring it home. And anything can happen. You know, I'm very blessed and grateful I was able to bring it home with no issues, honestly.
Well, you had a lot of time to think about this one, and of course, if things had gone differently 2 weeks ago, you probably still would have driven this car to victory lane, but I think the pressure would have been a lot less. How did you prepare for this one? Was it any different? Of course, you guys got a heads up that this new chicane was going to be added to the Roval on the service for this race. Was the preparation any different than any other road courses? I mean, strategy seemed to play just about as much of a factor as usual.
Yeah, I pretty much did the same thing, except like this is the biggest road race I've obviously ever done. Bigger than the Sonoma ones because of the implications of if I can win it, I can go race for a title. So it was that little bit extra motivated, obviously, because I knew my season really came down to this race, and it's been a rough year, you know. I've had really good cars, and it's just not worked out. Like last week at Indy, that was bad. It just sucked to be running in the lead, and then we're out of fuel pretty much, so it put pressure on me after this week. But I mean, I'm like nervous leading up to qualifying, and then once I get qualifying through, I'm fine. So I just I don't know, man. I just worked my butt off and gave it all I had, because I knew this was, you know, if I lose this one, then pretty much done until next year. So yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well, I think, you know, you look back a year or 2 years ago, I'm not sure that you would have, you know, thought that you would have an opportunity now to fight to win a $40,000 championship representing Joe Gibbs Racing on NBCSN, but you will be given that exact opportunity in 2 weeks' time as we head to Homestead Miami Speedway. What do these next 16 days or so look like for you? And, you know, does the practice start as soon as we let you go now?
Yeah, probably. I probably will take a couple hours break and maybe not even practice any tonight, because we do have like 2 extra days practice, I believe. So I was doing nothing else really with my free time other than practicing and working with my teammates for this past really week, since the new configuration came out, because that's when we really got to work. But we're gonna go out there to Homestead. We're gonna try to win it. Yeah, it's crazy that, you know, I'm with Joe Gibbs Racing, and we're gonna go race on NBC, but it is what it is. It's a race, and I race what I do, and I race to win, and we're gonna go freaking get that championship.
We look forward on seeing what that season finale will have in store. Until then, you're a race winner. That comes with $500, but most importantly, from the bottom to the top, the walk-off win this evening. Bobby, as always, the sponsors and the shout-outs who makes it happen for you and that 18 team.
Yeah, obviously, again, Joe Gibbs Racing. It's pretty wild to be a part of it, but I'm glad to represent them and put them in victory lane twice this season, hopefully a third time next time out. Obviously, Virtual Racing School, big supporter of mine. You go there for coaching, data packs, just anything that can help you become a better driver is there. And, kind of sim sport behind the scenes as well. My spotters, Martin and Philip, they have us asking them so many questions, just trying to get a better view of what I was doing out there with the race and strategy, and they helped a lot. And, Interstate Battery is also on the car. Glad we could run this paint scheme again. This is Bobby Labonte's 2000 championship paint scheme. I believe it's on the broadcast. I think we got it submitted in time. But anyways, we're going to run it again next week. And obviously, cannot stop without thanking Keegan and Chris Shearburn. Just amazing guys to work with. I wouldn't have won without them.
Well, you worked hard for this one tonight, Bobby, so we appreciate your time. Again, congratulations, not only on the win, but on being one of the drivers to make it all the way. We'll see what you've got in 2 weeks' time. Best of luck when you get there.
Thanks, man.
The race winner tonight from the Charlotte Roval, Bobby Zilinski, gets the win and moves on. The driver who came home in second, Tim, was looking for that same result. It's one spot short for Michael Conti, whose championship run ends tonight.
Yeah, the veteran in this battle coming in for this championship falls one position short. But, Mike, I know you were up on the wheel. Walk us through a night at the Homestead Miami Speedway. What else did you need in this number 8 car to get it done?
Well, Tim, obviously Bobby and Keegan and all of them are some of the setup builders for VRS. I'm not currently a subscriber of that service, but after tonight, I feel like I could learn a thing or two. If those VRS setups are half as good as that 18 car was, maybe I would have had something for him. But in all seriousness, just didn't quite have the short run for him tonight. We evened out quite a bit in the middle of the run, and then I could start to sometimes be a little bit quicker than him toward the end, but he would just pull out to such a huge lead, and he managed it super well. So not much more we could have done. We worked extremely hard the last 2 weeks. The whole Junior Motorsports crew dug down deep and found a lot of speed, and just came up a little bit short with this filter time car tonight, but proud of everything we did, and we had a good showing. So wish we would have won, but second place to somebody as good as Bobby is it's still pretty good.
And the brand new configuration of this Roval here at Charlotte, what were your thoughts on this racetrack? I know you're a road course guy. Was it as fun in the race car as it looked from up here?
Yeah, really fun in the race car. Wish I had somebody to race with. I was just kind of doing my own thing the whole race, sort of like Sonoma was, but really fun to drive, difficult to pass, even with the new backstretch chicane. The pace was just so even. Everybody was so close tonight, except for Bobby. So you couldn't really pass too much, but working lap traffic was fun. That was somewhat of a challenge, but everybody did a good job giving us room and being respectful of what was going on there. So a lot on the line. Like I said, we gave it our all. The track was really fun. If I had to choose anywhere to try to win my first race of the year, it definitely would have been here. But once again, Bobby has proven just how good he is at these road courses. So didn't quite have enough for him, but definitely was our best opportunity to win this year. So like I said, not a win, but at least this gives us some momentum going to the final race at Homestead.
And that final race happening in 2 weeks. You're on the outside looking in for the championship, but let's talk about that Homestead Miami Speedway. Can we get a victory there, and how does the mindset change, knowing that championship may be out of reach, but you're still racing for fifth in the points?
To be completely honest with you, right now I don't believe we have the pace to run with Keegan and Bobby. I mean, the Reynolds is pretty good. I think we could probably beat Lowe, but the Keegan cars are extremely strong, especially at the ovals. They don't really take off very well, but they just ignite the afterburner 5 laps into it, and we don't really have much for them. So we're not going to quit. We're not going to lay down here. Obviously not racing for a championship, but the prizes this year especially are really good, 5th through 8th. So a lot to race for still for myself and everybody else that we're working with. So not sure how we're going to do, but we'll give it our all. And we got a lot of people to make proud. Big thanks to Dale and Kelly and Brad and everybody at Junior Motorsports who gave me this opportunity this year. It's truly been a dream come true, and the amount of support we've gotten on social media this year has been really awesome. So thank you to everybody who supported this 8 car. Thank you to Blake and Filter Time. Wish we could have gotten the car into the Final Four, but given how tumultuous our season has been in a lot of ways, I'm happy with the result tonight.
You mentioned the marketing partners on this JRM race car, but before we let you go, I know you have a lot of team members that help you out. I know Hastings on the box helps you out a lot. Who else is on this team that helps you tweak the setups each week and get you to a second place run here at the Roval?
Yeah, huge thanks to Nick Ottinger. We've had an alliance with the 4017 this year. Nick and I have worked together for the last few years, and we wanted to keep that going. So big thanks to him. He really made things happen while I was up in Jersey dealing with everything with Mom before and after. So without him, I would not have made it to this point this year. So big thanks to him. Brandon Hastings, as always, for working on the setups and calling the strategy and just being there for me through the good and the bad this year. And everybody else, like I said, from Junior Motorsports, thank you all for believing in me and drafting me. Hopefully we can work together next year, continue this great relationship we have with Filter Time, and pick up some wins and go for another championship.
Well, folks, he's going to go for one more win here in a couple of weeks. It's Mike Conti coming home in position number 2. And Randy, he mentioned Nick Ottinger, good on these road courses, and it's another top 5 finish for this number 47 car. I believe you've caught up with him.
Yeah, the top 5 actually of this race, identical to what we had at Sonoma. Logan and Keegan in P4 and 5. They've just flip-flopped. But Nick, this is 2 road courses in a row. You've run 3rd to Michael in 2nd and Bobby winning. How frustrating is that for that number 47?
I want to consider it frustrating. I mean, we got to pass a couple cars tonight to get to where we finished. So, I mean, I can't complain about that. I will say I need to get to the gym because that was a little workout tonight for this Roval. It's pretty difficult to pass these guys.
And we head out to Homestead in a couple of weeks' time for these drivers like Bobby Zilinski, Keegan Leahy, all 4 that are going to be doing everything they can. Zach Novak and Blake Reynolds, of course, as well, going to be fighting for this championship at Homestead. Obviously, Zilinski and Leahy seem like the favorites, but from your perspective, who's your money on looking as we move to Homestead for the championship finale?
I don't think I can discount them at all. I mean, that's where I would place my bets, is one of them too. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that they just got so much pace pretty much everywhere this year, and that's just a testament how good they are. I mean, they've shown it, I'd say, week in and week out, even at those Roval and ovals. I mean, they're extremely fast at their ovals. I mean, I put my money on one of them. Definitely, it's a big deal for the other guys to get to the Final Four as well. It's a long season, difficult season, so I mean, good job to them.
Well, congratulations to you, Nick, on a strong podium finish. That number 47 JTG Daughtry car looked great out there today. Pretty much the same as it did out at Sonoma. Before we let you go, who gets it done for everyone involved with that number 47?
I want to thank our Kroger for sure for coming on board this year. I mean, I love having them as a sponsor. They've been really good to me, and definitely JTG, Blake, and everyone there. I definitely want to tip my hat to Michael Conti tonight. I know he didn't get a win, but I mean, he gave it his all, and that's all you have to do week in and week out. And you know, the cars didn't fall how we needed them to, but I mean, he done a great job.
There he was. Nick Ottinger comes home 3rd tonight. 4th place driver, the 99 Logan Clampett. Tim Terry, you're stood by with him.
Yeah, it's a great top 5 run for Logan Clampett, finishing in position number 4. And Logan, the race played out the way it did. You finished a couple of seconds ahead of Keegan Leahy. Talk about this race tonight at the Roval.
Yeah, just ran our race and raced the track. Not really anyone else. I really would have liked that podium, but Nick really deserves it there. He works really hard on our cars. Same with Conti. So it's all good. But we just tried our best there to try and catch Nick, but we just had no front turn there at the end. We got Keegan though, so that was cool. When Nick short pit us there, I knew it was kind of over from there, and we had to get by Keegan and everything. But overall, it was a solid race for us. It's a good way to almost end the season. We obviously have Homestead left, but Yeah, it was a pretty solid race. I'm glad we really went here and updated that chicane. That's for sure.
Came in, I believe, 8 points up or 7 points up on the cut line for that top 20 in this series. You're going to leave with over 25 points, I believe, on that cushion. So what does that change on the mindset going into the Homestead Miami Speedway? Can you take it a little bit easier at Homestead, or do you still have that top 20 bubble in the back of your mind?
It's definitely going to be in the back of my mind, but I think we'll be okay. I know a lot of those guys, there's going to be 3 teams in the Final Four, so they're going to be working really hard. So I know one of the teams has a lot of cars in the field, so it might be tough, but it might not be. We just have to see where we stack up, and hopefully we can stay in the top 20 for next year and not have to go through the Pro Series.
But can we finish off this season with a big win, obviously on NBCSN? Can we get that victory and close off this year at Homestead with a win?
It's going to be tough, man, but I'm really hoping so.
I know you got Steady MD on the side of this race car. Who else makes it happen for you? Who else is on the team? Let us know who makes it happen.
Yeah, definitely Steady MD. They do a lot for our team. Really appreciate them. So shout out to Steady MD there. And you can go to our website. It's steadymd.com/BKesports. And then over at the Team Conti guys, they do a really fantastic job. There's Mike Conti, Hastings, and Nick Ottinger, Matt Busa, and we just picked up Adam Benefiel. They work really hard on our cars to get them just right, especially this race with Conti almost having to win this race to get into the Final Four. It really sucks what happened at Indy for him to kind of not transfer. But that's just how racing goes sometimes. And obviously, Parker and Jeff, I'm actually going to be at the Roval this weekend. So really big thank you to them. Thank you to my dad, who watches almost every race. We actually just went to Monterey. Mazda flew us down there and had a really good time and supported the oval side. And finally, JDR Graphics for just this beautiful scheme, and especially Jason Loafing. He's been spotting me for half of the season, so really big shout out to him. He's a really good help.
And that's Logan Clampett coming home with position number 4 here this evening at the Roval. Great run, Randy, to try to lock himself into the top 20 for this series in 2020. Speaking about a driver locking himself in, Keegan Leahy looking at $40,000 potentially at Homestead. You've caught up with him in 5th.
Yeah, I'm stood by Keegan. And Keegan, you were in a dominant position coming into this race. You just had to run strong, not make any mistakes. Exactly what you did. We now head to Homestead, and there's so many races, the last 6 rounds that I can think of, that you've been in dominant positions and just luck didn't go your way and you weren't able to close it out. You were dominant in Indianapolis. You were dominant in Michigan. You were dominant at Darlington. Things haven't gone your way. The last 3, 4, 5 rounds, that 62 car has seemed like the car to beat. Do you think you're going to be in that situation again at Homestead where you're the car to beat? And if you are, you think you can finally close one out for 40 grand?
Yeah, well, we have a really good baseline setup for these 1.5-mile intermediate tracks, and we expect to be pretty strong again. Homestead's a pretty slick track. It's going to be nighttime, so it's going to be a little bit gripped up, but from what I heard, we're not going to be full throttle for very much of the run, probably only for a lap or 2. So it comes down to handling pretty quick. So that's where we're strongest, and we expect to be pretty quick, yeah, for sure. I need to beat as many laps as I can and hopefully lead the last lap. That's all I can really do. And if a bad caution happens to fall, well, I can't do anything about that. It's not like I can run a super long run just hoping for a caution to come out and then put myself in a position to lose the race just because I was trying to cover off a possibility. So, but I need to keep in mind that I'm racing 3 people, not 37. So I have to base my strategy off of how everyone else is running.
And on that topic, who do you think your main competition is going to be? We know that you and Bobby Zilinski work together. You guys are frequently on the same sets. Everyone talks about it, and it's obvious just with the pace that 18 and the 62 car have on the ovals, especially about midway through the run over everyone else. But you also have Zach Novak you're going to have to be holding off, and Blake Reynolds, who the last handful of races has looked really, really strong. Of those three drivers, who do you think is the primary one you're going to be holding off? Not that you're going to take any of them lightly, but who do you think is going to be your main competition out there?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really hard to say because all three of our teams have completely different strengths in our setups and how we race. You got Bobby and I with really good long run pace, but if it comes down to a short 5-lap run to the end, it's going to be Zach flying up through the field and passing all of us. Blake, he's got something like 10 or 12 teammates in the race. I'm sure they won't be racing us too easy. And they always have a pretty good setup as well. So I can't say. Honestly, it's probably going to be Bobby just because we have the pace advantage in general. Maybe another team will bring something to the table this week and challenge us even on the long run, but I can't tell you.
Well, Keegan, congratulations on getting yourself to this point in that number 62 G2 Esports car. And before we let you go, who gets it done for that organization as you head into the final round?
Man, I just got to give a huge congratulations to Bobby Zilinski on his win. He put so much work in this week. He totally deserved it. I have no idea how many hours he put in. He's just a level above everyone right now. He's so fast. I was closer than I thought I would be to him in the race, and I finished over 20 seconds away from him. So if that's saying something, I don't know what else would be a better way to put that. He's just so fast. Chris Shearburn puts in so much work. He's already got a huge head start on Homestead this week. We'll be ready for that race. And Mitchell DeYoung, thanks for spotting as usual. Did a great job this week. Gave me a lot of good information. Go into SimSport, everyone over there that helps me in the races. G2 for all their marketing and everything that they do to help me prepare for these races as well. I'm running a G27 or G29 pedal set that I really needed a few weeks ago. It's been super reliable and I'm glad to be using it. And Virtual Racing School, of course, for being on the hood. We're doing a lot of good things at VRS, and I think we're going to keep growing, and next couple of years is going to be really cool.
So there he was. Keegan Leahy will head into Homestead, probably in the minds of many as the favorite, but of course everyone equal on points into the final round, so it's going to be a sudden death race at Homestead. Evan, back over to you.
That's right, and a big thanks to our top 5 tonight for giving us an opportunity to chat with them. Of course, your race winner, Bobby Zilinski, coming home on top of the board, but also to Michael Conti, Nick Ottinger, Logan Clampett, and Keegan Leahy. And you're exactly right in that point, Tim, that Randy mentioned, that realistically, Leahy is the best driver in the round of 8. I mean, Zilinski wins, so he bumps to the top of the board. Bobby Zilinski now is a 5-time race winner in this series. 4 of those race wins have come on road courses, so Leahy may be the one to gun for, but there are no bonus points coming at it tonight. No bonus points are relevant going into that one. Let's take a look at our playoff grid. It is Zilinski, Leahy, Novak, and Reynolds, all dead even. Whichever one of them finish higher at Homestead, they will be the 2019 champion.
You look at Keegan Leahy's record the last little bit on those mile and a halves. As he mentioned in his post-race interview, he may very well be the one to beat going in to Homestead, but Bobby Zilinski comes off the momentum of a win. Zach Novak was really strong at the start of the year, struggled a little bit here this evening, but still had enough to get to where he needed to be to lock himself into Homestead. And then you have Blake Reynolds, who Indianapolis ran really strong coming down to the end of it. Homestead, Miami, it could come down to a fuel mileage race and pit strategy. You never know how it's going to play out at Homestead. We've seen so many wild finales at that racetrack. I think back to the year that Ray Alfala and Tyler Hudson battled for their championship, and Tyler Hudson ended up coming out on top with Ray Alfala throwing a Hail Mary at the end, and those two pretty much were virtually deadlocked going in to that race. But you got 4 going for this final one. We'll see who comes out with the victory. You'd have to believe, I think that Keegan Leahy might have a little leg up, but Zach Novak, Blake Reynolds, and Bobby Zilinski going to bring their A game. Can't wait to see how this all unfolds on the NBCSN.
And no shock either, Randy, that those drivers were ones that were scooped up pretty fast at the start of the season in the draft. Blake Reynolds, I think, is the underdog hard charger who has exceeded expectations and wants to play spoiler going into that one. But it is not the first time that we have seen this championship format decide a champion in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series. Of course, you cannot forget last year's thrilling race at Homestead, where Ray Alfalla would go on to win a record 4th career championship. At one point in that race, your championship 4 were 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and all chasing each other down. It'll be a tall bar to top, but as this series gets set for its first ever official points race on television, something tells me that these guys will all be up for the task. Not only your championship hopefuls, but the other 36 cars as well.
And what a race as well to be going on NBCSN as the finale for this 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series. Because you mentioned the fact that a lot of these guys went in the draft early. There's a lot of names that went really early in the draft that aren't there. Some of the earliest picks, the likes of Ray Alfalla and, of course, Luza and Conti, who are part of the playoffs. They're not going there. With the elimination, of course, on those 3 drivers, it means we go into Homestead in the biggest year of this championship for the past 10 years to date, with a guarantee at a new champion in this series. We might have to rack Tim Terry's brain here for a little bit of Tim facts, but I think we're probably, 4 years out, since the last time this has happened going into Homestead, that we're guaranteed a new champion in this series. You've always had the likes of Alfalla, or when Luza came in, Alfalla was definitely a part of it, and Conti as well. But I think this is the first time in a long time that we're guaranteed a new champion going into the finale.
Those are notable names. Luza and Alfalla have really dominated the championship battles for the last 2 seasons. Neither of them make it the distance in this 2019 campaign. With that, though, round number 17 and the round of 8 has fallen into our rearview mirror. That is it for us tonight for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. I want to say thanks to all of the people who make these broadcasts possible on Race Spot TV, for our director Hugo Luis, for Alex Horde providing the cameras, Andy Werner and Simon Grossman on the broadcast graphics, and also a shout out to Justin helping us out on the background support, and for your broadcast team tonight. For myself, Evan Pasoko, for Randy Cheneth and Tim Terry, I want to thank you for tuning in as we get set for one final race to determine a champion. It'll come in 2 weeks' time on Thursday, October the 10th, for the Championship 4 season finale at Homestead Miami Speedway. That race will be live coast to coast at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on NBCSN. We'll see you then as we crown the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series champion. Until then, though, good night from the Roval, where Bobby Zilinski's your race winner.